And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Tuesday, February 5th, 2013. This is a live broadcast. My name is Doug Hagmann. I'm the co-host along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And folks, for the next 3 hours, you're about to hear unbiased, uncensored news, analysis, information that you need to know. And we're going to give you the news today. News that is covered by the white noise of headlines, by the bullet points, by the political talking points that are nothing but bread and circus. It's meaningless. And we are going to work together tonight, ladies and gentlemen, to find the most important aspects, what we need to be looking at, what we need to be following, what we need to be concerning ourselves with as it relates to our situation. And it's whether you're in the United States of America, or whether you're in Canada, or whether you're in Great Britain, or Germany, France, Israel, wherever. The news is pretty much the same, and it's going to affect us equally. Joe, welcome to the show tonight.
Glad to be here. We got a lot of stuff going on, very important news headlines. You got a special report you're going to get into, something that people have been waiting for a while, and as well as a lot of other important news stories on the economy and the police state. And I don't know if you want to go ahead and...
just so people know, and I have not really made this known to everyone. People have been asking about the Department of Homeland Security insider source, and I do have the information that will be released. I'll be sending it to Canada Free Press here shortly, and we'll be posting it at HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's our home base, by the way, HomelandSecurityUS.com. And I'll be posting that later this evening. But by the way, I've been getting email messages, people wondering how to access the chat feature of our program. And Joe, why don't you take people through the process, if you don't mind, because we're getting new listeners all of the time, and the chat feature is something that people want to. There are certain people who want to interact and are unable to find where that is.
Okay. Well, what you do real simply is you can create an account on Blog Talk Radio if you want to engage and talk and type in chat. And if you don't want to create a username and you just want to watch the chat, well, underneath our main show page on Blog Talk Radio, the chat room is usually opened about half hour to an hour before the show. And if you just keep refreshing the page, it'll pop up underneath the player on the Blog Talk Radio Hagmann and Hagmann Report episode for whatever night it is when we're live. So under the player, scroll down, the chat room's there.
And people have to realize, too, look closely at the sometimes the top program is not the current program. It's the featured program. So watch carefully when you click on the on the, what would you call it, the title, I guess. Click on when you click on the title. Make sure it's the current day.
Yeah, and if it's after 8 o'clock, there's a big red on-air banner that goes across the show that is on the air at the moment.
All right, because we do have people listening. Actually, it's kind of funny because we do have a gathering, as I had mentioned earlier last week and earlier this week. We have a gathering of people who actually are listening to us in a diner setting, and I'm not sure how many people are there. I just want to say hello to you folks, Chad and the rest who have emailed me, and there's a group of people that listen to the show. through their internet connection at the diner. So it's kind of interesting how that works out. But tonight, Joe, you put the program, a lot of the program together, and it's about the drones, and it's about what's taking place here in this country.
And not just this country. It's happening in all kinds of nations across the earth, as we are now full-scale invasion of the U.S. into Africa, into 35 countries in Africa. We have the Pentagon building an North African drone base. They already have an extensive Middle Eastern drone program where they've been killing civilians for years. And now the Justice Department has come out and said there's a legal case for drone strikes on Americans. And they released a 16-page memo which goes on to state that the White House has the authority, the U.S. government could use lethal force in a foreign country outside of the area of hostilities against a U.S. citizen who is a senior operational leader of Al-Qaeda or an associated force of Al-Qaeda.
Okay.
That is, an Al-Qaeda leader actively engaged in planning operations to kill Americans. That's what this paper starts out by saying. The paper does not attempt to determine minimum requirements necessary to carry out such an operation, nor does it access what might be required to render it a lethal operation against a U.S. citizen, lawful or in other circumstances. Basically, now I have a clip of Judge Napolitano breaking down what this means, but the president has the authority to drone strike anybody he wants, anywhere he wants, without any approval.
Well, are you queuing that up, or you want to?
Yeah, we can play that if you want.
Well, you know what? Before we get into the hard news, I just feel compelled to tell everyone a couple of things too. Those of you who are familiar with Pete Santilli, I'm going to be on live with Pete Santilli on his program tomorrow. I believe it's at 3 o'clock Eastern. I believe or 3:20 Eastern. I believe his show is off the left coast, and that starts at noon. I'm not sure how long it'll be on, but it's pretty much a large part of the program, I believe. So that should be, those of you who are familiar with him, Peter Santilli, the Pete Santilli program is a pretty wide audience. So I'll be on there tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And then, Joe, I think you'll be on another program. I'm not sure, BBS or...
Yeah, well, the scheduling's still being worked out, so I'll keep updated on that. Also, next Wednesday, the 13th, we will be on Lori's News Talk Radio right after our show for an hour.
Okay. And then, of course,
Blog Talk Radio.
Okay. And then, of course, folks, on Thursday, just kind of housekeeping here, on Thursday we're going to have as a special guest Mr. Daniel Holdings. He's the author of As the Darkness Falls, Things Are Not What They Seem. Mr. Holdings has written a book. It's kind of a faction book. It's fact-based or fiction based on fact, and it's a pretty engaging book, and it kind of gives an idea of where we are at today with things. So a very, very talented author. I would definitely recommend tuning in on Thursday when we have Daniel Holdings. But before we go any further, I just want to tell everyone, I picked up. I was sent, and thank you, Marianne, a book called Pawns in the Game. This is a book by William Guy Carr, and William Guy Carr had written quite a few books, such as By Guess and By God, High and Dry, and Hell's Angels of the Deep, and so on. But this book, Pawns in the Game, was published back in 1954. And, we hear things like there's nothing new under the sun. And it's interesting because when William Guy Carr, the author, was born in 1895 and he passed away in 1959. And it's interesting, like I said, people say, well, there's nothing new under the sun. If you go to Wikipedia, which I'm not a fan of, we don't use Wikipedia as any type of reliable source. William James Carr is described as a Canadian naval officer, an author, and best remembered today as a conspiracy theorist, the most influential source in creating the American Illuminati demonology. Now, that's how Wikipedia describes him. But I just want to read or reference, paraphrase, if you will, just part of the book that he wrote in 1954. I came across this earlier today when I was taking a break from doing some research on current events. And I about fell off my chair because the writings of Mr. Carr back in 1954 are much like they are today. And if you would substitute Churchill for the current Prime Minister and other names, once again, there's nothing new under the sun. But that said, I just want to kind of touch on a few things kind of to set the tone for tonight's program, especially since we're going to be talking about drones. But Mr. Carr writes in his book that World War III, if started by the Eastern communist dictators, now that kind of gives you an idea of the time frame, but put in there, or just drop Eastern communist dictators, World War III, if started, will begin without much warning. An international general strike will be called for in all capitalistic countries. And he goes on to talk about weapons of mass destruction being used, blockades, and so on. But he talks about the communist agenda and the New World Order agenda. Believe it or not, the one world governance agenda. And what got me is the following, and I'll be brief. But he says if World War III is permitted to take place, the devastation will be so extensive that the internationalists will continue to justify their contentions that only a world government backed by an international police force can solve the various national and international problems without resorting to further wars. So think about that, folks. Even back in 1954, 60 years ago almost, this is what he was writing. The argument, he says, will appear to be very logical to many people who overlook the fact that both the Eastern communist leaders and the Western capitalist leaders intend to ultimately bring into effect their ideas for an atheistic totalitarian dictatorship. Now think about that. Isn't that what we're seeing today? He says people who wish to remain free can follow only one plan of action. Are you ready for this? And this is where I almost got to fall out of my chair. They must support Christianity against all forms of atheism and secularism. And by the way, if he was writing today, all forms of atheism, secularism, and Islam. They must support private responsible enterprise against cartels and combines. They must support those who advocate the new economy against those who would continue with the old. And I thought, wow, man, it's like reading something from today. And when a person is in doubt, he writes, regarding the right and wrong of anything, all he or she needs to do to solve his or her uncertainty is to recite the first half of the Lord's Prayer slowly and contemplate on the meaning of those wonderful words of wisdom. He writes, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. And it doesn't require more than a few minutes to decide if any act to be performed individually or collectively is in accordance with the will of God or furthering the machinations of the devil. Now, if we intend to save the future generations from the fate being prepared for them by the forces of evil, we must take immediate action, he writes. There is no time to lose. The reader may well ask, but what action must we take? Well, that's a good question. And the answer, if the answer wasn't provided, there would be no justification for his books or any other books or even our radio show. Far too many men spend a great deal of time damning this and damning that, and He writes, and there are anti-this and anti-that things. Very few speakers or writers who condemn an idea, an organization, or a movement offer any practical solutions to the problem, or even make suggestions, or even tell anyone how to bring an end to the evils that have been exposed. But he writes this, and I'll close with this list here of things that he does write on how to handle what we're in today, because, again, there's nothing new under the sun. First, we must, as individuals, recognize the spiritual issues involved. Once again, the Scriptures advise us how to accomplish this purpose, and we have had callers and guests reference Ephesians, the 6th chapter, the 10th through the 17th verses, that tell us, "Brethren, be strengthened in the Lord, and in the whole of his power. Put on the armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." And that's good advice for listeners, guests, and us. And for our wrestling is not against the flesh and blood, but against the principalities and the powers, against the world rulers of darkness, of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness on high. Therefore, take up the armor of God, that you may be able to resist that evil day, and stand in all things perfect. Stand, therefore, having girded your loins with the truth. And that's what we want to do. And having put on the breastplate of justice, and having your feet shed with the readiness of the gospel of peace. In all things, taking up the shield of faith. And second, we must take practical steps and use constitutional means to counteract the threat, both international communism and the one world order that they threaten us with. We must resist the subversive ideologies. We must expose subversive ideologies, which are attempting to destroy true Christian democracy. In order to carry out the mandate in the gospel, we must do a couple of things. We must demand monetary reforms, he writes back in 1954. Well, that ship has kind of sailed, hasn't it? But maybe not really. We can still demand monetary reforms. We can still demand constitutional means be instituted. We can fight. And he writes, monetary controls. The electors must insist that the issue of money and the control thereof be placed back in the hands of the government. That is the Treasury, not the Federal Reserve, where it rightfully belongs. And we, the people, must be able to manage the government, not the other way around. And then, of course, he talks about punitive action, which we, the people, can justifiably demand things of our government. That is to say, if the Constitution is still alive, and if we can still continue under the ideology of America. And lastly, the Christian crusade. We're in this together, all of us, listeners and other talk show hosts alike, and people who are listening to this program, whether you're in whatever country you're in, but laymen of all Christian denominations should unite in the name of God to put an end to bigotry and misunderstanding, which enables the anti-Christian ideologies to keep Christians divided. We're being divided. The house divided within itself must fall, and this division is being perpetrated at the hands of those people, of those New World Order people. So folks understand that laymen, laymen of all denominations, people of all Christian denominations, we need to unite in the name of God. We need to put an end to the bickering, to the misunderstandings, to the divisiveness, because that enables the very enemies of Christianity, the anti-Christian ideologies, to keep us divided and at loggerheads. The house divided cannot stand, it must fall. And the crusade should be organized for the purpose of educating the public in regard to the methods by those who understand what's taking place. We need to give special attention to our youth of today and make sure that they are protected from the subversive actions of the agents of the conspiracies and conspirators. The Crusaders should be trained to take a positive approach when dealing with those who have joined the subversive organizations, either willingly or because of ignorance. And in that context, he was certainly talking about the various communist rules, if you will, or communist groups. But today we're talking about the progressives, the fascists, the people who are involved in the one world government, the social justice people. That's what we're fighting. And one last thing he mentions, and it's true today, it's as true today as it was in 1954. The United Nations is the Trojan horse of international conspiracy and the spearhead of the world revolutionary movement. And he references Alger Hiss, Soviet agent and convicted perjurer, who wrote most of the UN Charter, as being a person to fight, to put down legally. And you know, he was correct. But now it doesn't matter who that person is, because the United Nations is out of control. It is the Trojan horse of international conspiracy, and it is the spearhead of the world revolutionary movement, and we must fight it at every turn. And I just thought when I read this today, and once again, the author, William Guy Carr, the name of the book, Pawns in the Game. It's 60 years old, but it's as true today as it was back then. And you know, I've gone through these chapters upon chapters and words and paragraphs, and aside from the men, aside from the people in charge, there's nothing new under the sun. And you know, I looked at it, and Joe and I spoke, and I'll tell you what, it's an astounding thing, Joe. How
that was really good.
Man, isn't that something? Isn't that? So, you know, and that's so important that we have to understand. And one more thing, Joe, before, and I apologize for jumping topic here, but before I get myself into trouble, you know, I mentioned about being prepared, and I asked the question, how prepared are you? And I mentioned the a method of heating the inside of your house, you know, if the power goes out. And I mentioned a product, and I received an email from a gentleman, and I have not been able to call him, but I want to thank him very much. He pointed out, he said, man, you know, that just might not be the way to go, the safest way to go or the most efficient way to go. So everything I said about, you know, attaching a propane-type heater to the top of a propane tank, if you don't mind, just kind of forget that. I'll be talking with this gentleman as soon as possible, and I'm sure he's a heating expert.
So, like financial advice. Don't ever take financial advice from you or fire instructions.
Exactly, or driving lessons. You know, I've got to tell you that, because I'm not the best driver, and which is funny because I used to be pretty good, but now, you know, as you get older, you just kind of get. I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. But going back to the Pawns in the Game and William Guy Carr and where we're at today, there's nothing new under the sun. And I'll tell you what, we had the unification as Christians. I think is so important. Boy, of all things, it's so important. But we've got a lot of news. Yes. You know what, Joe? We've got a lot of news to hit, and I know you've been hard at work gathering headlines and such. So let's get into it.
All right. We have the Justice Department. Memo reveals legal case for drone strikes on Americans. And fitting is the title of tonight's show, President Drone Assassin. And that he is just that, the Nobel Peace Prize winning murderer by unmanned aerial vehicle. And this report, a confidential Justice Department memo, concludes that the U.S. government can order the killing of American citizens if they are believed to be senior operational leaders of al-Qaeda or an associated force, even if there is no intelligence indicating they are engaged in an active plot. And another article, that was from NBC, This one says the NBC News has posted a chilling confidential DOJ white paper outlining the legality of extrajudicial drone strikes on U.S. citizens suspected of terrorism, even without intelligence to show involvement in a plot to attack America. While admitting that U.S. citizens are still afforded constitutional protections, such as due process when they travel abroad, the 16-page report claims the U.S. citizenship of a leader of al-Qaeda or its associated forces or whoever they label as a possible threat does not give that person constitutional immunity from the attack. And right now I'm going to play an audio clip.
Well, you can play the other clip, but I think we lost you there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. You dropped off.
Okay. This clip is the 2-in-1. It's Judge Napolitano. It also plays the Jay Carney audio, which Jay Carney today came out and said that these drone strikes were not only legal, but they were ethical and they were wise. So we're going to go to that audio now with Judge Napolitano on Fox News. It's about 6 minutes, but it's worth a listen.
Worth a listen indeed.
All right.
Action from the White House after a Justice Department memo raises questions about whether the administration has created the power to kill terrorist suspects, even if they are not involved in an active plot to attack the U.S. and their U.S. citizens. Welcome to America Live. I'm Shannon Bream in for Megyn Kelly. The so-called white paper sparking concerns on both sides of the aisle. A bipartisan group of senators now calling for the president to release all memos related to this new drone policy, while the American Civil Liberties Union calls the document, quote, chilling. The DOJ seems to be arguing that the White House has almost the power to kill indiscriminately. Here's White House Press Secretary Jay Carney just moments ago.
This president takes his responsibilities very seriously, and first and foremost, that's his responsibility to protect the United States and American citizens. He also takes his responsibility in conducting the war against al-Qaeda as authorized by Congress in a way that is fully consistent with our Constitution and all the applicable laws.
All right, Judge Andrew Napolitano is a former New Jersey Superior Court judge and a Fox News senior judicial analyst. He was a vocal critic of some of the Bush administration's war on terror policies. Judge, what do you say to this one?
Well, this one is carrying things to an extreme that most Americans won't recognize, Shannon, because as you stated so nicely in the introduction, a fair interpretation of this 16-page document and of Jay Carney, the president's press secretary, of Jay's interpretation of it is that the president, or, quote, a high-ranking U.S. government official, close quote, I'm quoting from the document, can kill anyone he wants, no matter what the laws say, no matter what the Constitution says, no matter what this president himself has said. That is nowhere justifiable under the Constitution, nowhere justifiable under federal law. In fact, federal law and the Constitution are to the opposite. Unless you are actually pulling a trigger or within moments of pulling that trigger or dropping a bomb, the government has an obligation to do its best to arrest you and charge you with a crime and prosecute you before it can indiscriminately kill you. In the case at hand, the 3 people killed were Americans. One of them was Anwar al-Awlaki, admittedly an anti-American cleric who the government says participated in plots against us. The other was his 16-year-old son and the son's friend, neither of whom had anything remotely to do with the reason for which the drones were sent there.
All right, there is this letter we mentioned. It is bipartisan. A number of top-ranking senators, Republicans and Democrats alike, have signed on to this letter to the president, essentially saying we have grave concerns about what's being outlined here. They say it's vitally important for Congress and the American public to have a full understanding of how the executive branch interprets the limits and boundaries of this particular authority. And what they're saying here is that there's a lot of wiggle room in these definitions. And when you talk about being able to kill an American citizen, as you said, without the constitutional right to face a jury and all kinds of other due process and things, there's a lot of gray area there. And even if people would argue it's useful now because of someone like Anwar al-Awlaki, you always have to think of where it leads down the line. And you and I know from law school, one of the first things you learn is the slippery slope argument. Right.
Well, I think the members of Congress have a couple of concerns on their hands, on their minds. The first is your argument that this power used today against an unpopular target might be used in the future by another president against a person the president doesn't like, but as to whom there's no moral justification for pursuing whatsoever. Another concern is this 16-page white paper is written so vaguely that the logic from it could actually be extrapolated to permit the president to kill Americans here in the United States. And the third concern the members of Congress have, I would suggest to you, Shannon, is they're upset that they didn't know about this because there's another federal statute that the president violated when he did this without telling them. You see, when the president ramps up the war on terror or decides to move into another area or use the CIA to engage people, whether to arrest them or to kill them, he's required to tell the Senate and House Intelligence Committees ahead of time and get their consent. He apparently didn't do that, and so they're burned by this.
Yeah, not the first time on an important issue that has happened. What about the fact that we have seen other memos unrelated to this out there, but the way that they classify terrorism, they also look at domestic terror issues, and there are those who, there have been memos out there, you've seen them, I've seen them, that have suggested people who have extreme religious views, people who are pro-life. Some of those people could be in some ways considered domestic terrorists. They're on watch lists, or they should be monitored by the government. I mean, how far could this be taken? Well,
you know, early in this administration, Janet Napolitano, no relation, the Secretary of Homeland Security, issued a very startling memorandum, and I remember discussing it with Bill O'Reilly in a whimsical way, but it's really terrifying. The memorandum said people who are pro-life, people who believe in the right to keep and bear arms, returning veterans, people who think the government is too big and the IRS is too powerful, could be characterized as domestic terrorists. Well, that group of people could characterize two-thirds of the country. And this language, this frivolous use of language by this administration, and then claiming they have the right to use force to stop dead in their tracks the people who fit into these categories, violates the principles of the Declaration of Independence and violates the supremacy of the Constitution, which they've taken an oath to uphold. This is all very dangerous stuff. The government gets its powers from the consent of the governed. Do you know anybody who consented to the government doing this?
Judge, I got to ask you a super quick question. I'm going to get in trouble, but I just need a yes or no answer for you. This administration has pushed the boundaries, as many do, on a number of things, using executive orders, federal regulations, going around Congress. And the public often, there may be an initial outcry and then they go along with things. With this, with it going public, yes or no, do you think the administration moves forward and makes this official policy?
No. I think the administration is going to run into a brick wall on this one.
All right, Judge. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Shannon.
And that was the full clip. You can find that at Real Clear Politics, and I posted a link in the chat room. But no, what this Judge Napolitano said it right. They can kill anyone, anywhere, and who are they labeling as terrorists? We've seen too much of it recently. Christians, New World Order, people who believe in a New World Order, people who are anti-abortion, anti-United Nations, anti-one world religion, and they are serious. Now, I want to go back to what Jake Carney said, and because I think it's very important. He says the president takes his responsibility very seriously to protect the U.S. and its citizens. Well,
how can that be?
Excuse me. Yeah, you're killing hundreds of civilians, thousands of civilians in other countries, not including the thousands of alleged militants that have been murdered, along with the hundreds of children, without any evidence, without a trial, without any due process. Even 16-year-old American-born U.S. citizens have been killed in drone strikes. Even though they weren't the target, it's still the fact that they have been used to kill Americans before. And remember, in the NDAA, Lindsey Graham said America is the battlefield. The whole world is the battlefield, including America.
I think that distresses me most because I think the implication there is clear. America being called the battlefield, labeled the battlefield. At what point in time are we going to see a drone, an armed predator drone, take out a vehicle, we'll say in some back road in New Mexico or Arizona or Idaho or Montana, and nothing will be left? And how are we going to, at that point, there will be nothing to examine, and we're going to be compelled to take the word of the government that this was a bad guy. And was it really? And I think that's, have we come to that point? And I would dare say, Joe, that we've really been conditioned and preconditioned. Remember the popularity, and boy, I watched it, the series 24 with Kiefer Sutherland, and saving America, and whatever it takes by any means necessary to avoid that nuclear bomb going off. But boy, what a conditioning tool for this country. It's just going to be a matter of time before something does happen.
Yeah. Holder also approved of these measures. The confidential memo lays out a 3-part test that would make a targeted killing of American lawful. In addition to the suspect being an imminent threat, capture of the target must be infeasible, and the strike must be conducted according to the law of war principles. But the memo elaborates on some of these factors in ways that go beyond what the Attorney General said publicly. For example, it states the U.S. officials may consider whether an attempted capture of a suspect would pose an undue risk to U.S. personnel involved in such an operation. If so, U.S. officials could determine the capture operation of the targeted American would be not feasible, making it lawful for the U.S. government to order a killing instead, the memo concludes. The undated memo is entitled Lawfulness of a Lethal Operation Directed Against a U.S. Citizen Who is a Senior Operational Leader of Al-Qaeda or an Associated Force. And the 3 things that Holder lays out. 1, an informed high-level official the U.S. government has determined to be a targeted individual who poses an imminent threat of violence against an attack against the United States. 2, capture, as I just said. And 3, the operation would be conducted with manners applicable with the laws of war. Now, Jay Carney, I'm going to go back to the audio clip. I have a short audio clip of Jay Carney and what he said, because you guys got to listen closely. He says they have the congressional authority to do this.
Well, the question, obviously, that you asked relates to some stories out today regarding a document prepared, an unclassified document prepared for some members of Congress, and understandable questions. And I can just say that, this president takes his responsibilities very seriously, and first and foremost, that's his responsibility to protect the United States and American citizens. He also takes his responsibility in conducting the war against Al-Qaeda as authorized by Congress in a way that is fully consistent with our Constitution and all the applicable laws. We have acknowledged, the United States, that sometimes we use remotely piloted aircraft to conduct targeted strikes against specific Al-Qaeda terrorists in order to prevent attacks on the United States and to save American lives. We conduct those strikes because they are necessary to mitigate ongoing actual threats, to stop plots, prevent future attacks, and again, save American lives. These strikes are legal, they are ethical, and they are wise. The U.S. government takes great care in deciding to pursue an Al-Qaeda terrorist, to ensure precision, and to avoid loss of innocent lives.
Sure you do. I mean, come on. This is legal, ethical, and wise. First of all, it is not legal to innocently slaughter, no matter who you believe is a criminal or believe to be something. You have to bring a case before a judge, evidence against the accused, and the accused has an opportunity to confront the accuser under our Constitution. So this is anything but constitutional. Obviously, it's not ethical, and it's definitely not legal. No matter what executive orders, garbage laws they pass, this is just, they're selling murder in a different form. And now they're doing it all over the world. The U.S. is no different. They're going to start doing it here. You have, in Africa, they've deployed the full-scale invasion of the United States, deploys troops in 35 African countries, That is today, is the headline from today, beginning of Libya, Sudan, Algeria, and Nigeria, reported by the Associated Press on Christmas Day. This is missing from most of the American media. The invasion has almost nothing to do with Islam and almost everything to do with the acquisition of resources, notably minerals, and an accelerating rivalry with China. Unlike China, the U.S. and its allies are prepared to use a degree of violence demonstrated in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, and Palestine. Now, I don't remember war being declared on Yemen or Pakistan, but to go along with that, we have the Pentagon plans a new North African drone base to help these 35 troops in these 35 different African countries to conduct more ethical, legal, moral cleansing, I guess you'd call it, or a purging, or mass murder, whatever they call it. It's mass murder, bottom line.
Well, if nothing else, if there's a ray of hope in all of this, it's interesting because Charlottesville, Virginia, has become the first U.S. city to ban government spy drones, and by spy drones, that would also include predator drones as well. Not that this is going to really make any difference, but it's interesting how we're seeing the state initiatives and even city or local initiatives go against federal the federal agenda. This is reported by InfoWars today and yesterday too. But the question is, are we going to allow, are the American people going to allow drones overhead, drones to strike American citizens in country or other countries? Are we going to allow this to take place? And if not, what are we prepared to do about it? I really feel at this point that we need to, what you mentioned, Joe. By the way, I don't know if you can adjust your audio. I don't know if people are having a hard time hearing you, but it's kind of distorted. But having said that, and folks, well, we're in different locations. But now, having said that about the drones and about the federal versus state versus local and all of this, could it very well be that the intent here is to cause divisiveness on yet another level? And just like the gun control, there's this divisiveness that's being caused between the states and the federal government. So all of these things are things to watch. I cannot see, and isn't it interesting too? We go back to what Lindsey Graham had said, all of America now is the battlefield. He almost said it with glee in his voice, if you recall that. There is something decidedly wrong here, and we have both sides of the coin that are falling into this. Folks, I don't know at this point. I just don't know at this point. No one is talking about it. I happen to hear some of what Sean Hannity said today and has been saying about this. Well, it's okay to an extent if you're going after the bad guys, and not one bad guy, not one terrorist was hurt by waterboarding and such. But doesn't I guess at the end of the day, the question that should be asked is, does this conform to what our Constitution allows and permits, whether it be drone strikes or enhanced interrogation techniques or whatever? And no, it doesn't. You're entitled to due process, but we're not. And this is decidedly unconstitutional.
It's so frustrating to sit here and listen to people like Jay Carney and Sean Hannity, anybody who justifies the mass murder of citizens by remote control vehicle or any other means where they're not brought before or held up to the laws of the Constitution. And I would agree that there would be some instances where drones could have been used, we'll say Benghazi on September 11th, 2011, but obviously to target individuals and consider the people around them as collateral damage with heat-seeking missiles based on somebody's intelligence or, okay, yeah, this guy could pose a threat to the U.S. I mean, that's all they need to say. He could pose a threat in the future. He could. There's a possibility he might.
It's almost like a Star Chamber, folks. You remember the movie that had the maybe it was the Star Chamber, I don't know, but a group of men, and this is what we have right now, a group of men inside the executive branch deciding who lives and who dies. And we're not really fighting a war. I mean, this is not how wars are fought.
And not to get off the subject, but apparently there's been an 8.0 earthquake.
Yes, there has, and the tsunami. Yeah. Okay,
and it's following a 6.4 aftershock. That's pretty big. So we're going to keep our eye on that. But back to the drones. It is unprecedented. And I wasn't going to upload this audio. It was 10 minutes of Joe Scarborough and his gang in the morning. But they were saying, if Bush did this, he'd be done. They were saying that. So, the Judge Napolitano making a valid point when he says that, no, Obama won't be able to get away with this? I don't think so. This is part of the program. And if Obama doesn't use the drones for killing on American soil under his administration, I don't know. They've been used to spy on farmers in the Midwest. They've been used in North Dakota on a family. They've been used everywhere where they shouldn't be, and except the border. They're not. They say they're used at the border, the drones for monitoring, but we have drones monitoring our highways. We have the FAA allowing 30,000 drones to fly in American skies. Those laws are already passed. Those drones are already in the sky, some of them. The rest of them are coming. And these aren't just regular monitoring drones. These are armed Reaper drones. These are they can be equipped with any kind of munitions they need to be equipped with. And we've seen and went over countless instances of innocent children being killed. What was it? Ben Swan did a report that 11 times the amount of children that were killed in Sandy Hook have been killed by drone strikes and collateral damage since Obama took office. But yet we're doing this for Americans and their safety. Well, who is an American anymore? Who do they consider an American? They do everything that's anti-American. The real Americans are the ones standing up for freedoms and liberty, and they're now labeled a terrorist. So it's not a far stretch to see if things go south fast, how those drones will, and probably, I would guess that they will be used against an American citizen on American soil before, any outrage or backlash happens, because it's not happening here right now, so people don't care.
Well, one of these days, and folks, I'm sure you can relate to this, I have a feeling that our children or grandchildren are going to ask, gee, what was freedom like? And what's our answer going to be? And perhaps they might ask, well, what did you do when it was time, to stand up for freedom and to stand up for the Constitution? Our Fifth and Seventh Amendments have been taken away from us via these drone strikes. Any sensible person also knows that the First Amendment, through the Health and Human Services mandate, ignoring the free exercise clause, has been under assault, as well as through free speech zones. The Second Amendment massively is under assault, obviously. The Fourth Amendment, as we see by the TSA, online surveillance of our emails, warrantless searches, that's under assault. The Sixth Amendment, intentionally basically tainting the jury pool, the jury of our peers, that's under assault by the Holder Justice Department. The Eighth Amendment, I could go on and on. The Ninth, 10th Amendment.
There's no law these people haven't broken yet.
No, not at all. And this way a storm approaches, I believe. Isn't it interesting? They're monitoring our computers. They're labeling us, the Christian, conservative, constitutionalist, patriots, God-fearing, bitter clingers, if you will. They're monitoring us, our banking and our credit card transactions. They're squeezing us through the banking regulations because, hey, if goodness knows, if we attempt to buy or sell now through Bank of America, as we have seen, guns, and then we own, let's say we're a federally licensed firearms dealer, there goes our account. And it's not Al-Qaeda that these people are out to eliminate. Does anyone doubt that our government has us? We the people, we the Christians, we the people who believe in the country?
Who is Al-Qaeda anyway? They're a creation of the U.S. government. They've even admitted so by Hillary Clinton. We have funded them in Egypt and Libya and Syria now, and all throughout the Middle East. At the same time, they are used as the number one fear-mongering excuse to bring away freedoms from people for the last, since 9/11. I mean, it's just a sick, twisted joke to these people. They create these people, they fund them, they carry out attacks in their names, sometimes using patsies, sometimes the people will do it. I mean, I don't know, I have all the details, nor do most people, but we know some certain facts. One, the government sponsors Al-Qaeda, okay? They've invented them, they have been giving them money the whole time, before 9/11 and after 9/11, and now they're giving them countries and resources and tanks and fighter jets and just to fulfill their agenda. And then it'll be taken out like the rest of us. So there is no real enemy out there and there will be no real attack unless the government allows it to happen.
Well, you know, I found a very interesting posting on a political forum by someone who claims to be a patriot and someone who claims to be a conservative, who says, you know, gee, sorry, folks. Now, this is when talking about the drone, the ability drone strikes and what have you. He says, sorry, folks, but Americans that join Al-Qaeda, they need to be killed just like any other terrorist scumbag. It's a war paradigm, not a law enforcement paradigm. And this person writes, yeah, I'm suspicious of Obama's motives like everyone else, and I've got my own endgame stockpiles, but this doesn't scare me. It's just confirmation of, indeed, a vindication of the Bush policy on the very same matter. Well, what this person fails to realize, this is not a Republican-Democrat issue. This is a people issue. This is a constitutional issue. And it's unfortunate that we're still seeing this old mindset that pits Republicans against Democrats. It's not. I mean, that is a paradigm that I just you can't justify it in those terms. So, but that's the mindset of a lot of people out there. Now, that said, I mean, we've covered a lot on drones, but according to our sources, and I will say this, there will be a drone strike in this country with a predator drone, and it will take out an alleged terrorist, and there will be applause, virtual applause, if you will, because of this. And I've said this in the past, this according to my sources within the intelligence industry. Venue that yeah, you're going to see this. It's a matter of conditioning the American public, because right after that first drone strike on American soil, it's kind of like somebody killing someone else, like a contract killer. Their first kill, difficult, but the second, third, and subsequent murders, not so much. And once that veil is pierced, that wall has been knocked down, well, isn't it easier, folks, to justify continued strikes, especially, and even if the proof or need is even more tenuous than the first or the second? We're headed on some very dangerous ground here. And it's us. that we are the intended targets. So, Joe, I'll tell you what, man,
that's right.
We're in trouble.
Florida, Tampa Bay, the Florida Highway Patrol, Troop C, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Polk, Pasco, Hernando, Sumter, and Citrus counties have announced the roads it plans to target with driver's license and vehicle inspection checkpoints in February. Says the FHP says checkpoints will be conducted during daytime hours and generally causing delays of 5 minutes or less. And this report is kind of watered down, but it goes on to the first question they ask: is this legal? There is a policy established by the Florida Highway Patrol that specifies their legal guidelines that must be undertaken by the agency to conduct driver license and vehicle safety inspection checkpoints. The information provided below comes directly from that policy. But what they do is say yes, every third, as long as they do it in a organized fashion, where it's not every vehicle or it's every third vehicle will be stopped. However, the checkpoint supervisor will monitor traffic to ensure a backup doesn't occur. If delays more than 3 to 5 minutes occur, the checkpoint supervisors may order alternate vehicle count. So the first answer, or the first question, is it legal, isn't answered in this. They just talk about how they would conduct the operation, and also it says, it goes on to say, what do you need at this checkpoint? Troopers will request a driver's license and vehicle registration from each driver detained. Okay? You hear that word, detained, not stopped, because you can't be stopped by a police checkpoint because that is interrupting your free flow of travel. You are detained at a point when you are stopped in a checkpoint. And I hope everybody understands the legal terms of this, because when you're dealing with police officers at checkpoints, you can tell them it is my, right not to be detained, and I want to go, and I'm not going to answer your questions. And you could be met with the okay, or you could be met with a get out of the car, or a club up your head. I don't know. But anyway, the point of the matter is,
right,
military drills in urban areas, checkpoints, TSA, bus stops, train stations, Super Bowl, highways, it's coming to you. The walls are closing in. Drones, surveillance grids, it doesn't matter. There is no privacy. There is no freedom. There is only the illusion of freedom. And I know we're coming up against a break. Some of the stories we're going to hit on. Watch the dollar. It could trigger the next crisis. That's from NBC News. Also, from the Washington Times, 7 million will lose their insurance under Obama health law. And on other news on the economy and the health law, pathway to citizenship could increase Obamacare cost up to $300 billion over a decade. And that is a low figure. They say up to $2 trillion over the next 10 years, possibly.
Wow. Well, before we get to the top of the hour break, I don't know how many people are aware of this. In fact, in the event you heard our studio phone ringing, that was Clear Channel, Coast to Coast. Philip Marshall, frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM, was found dead, an apparent murder-suicide. I just now got this information.
I heard about that last night, and I thought about sending it to you.
Okay. Well, apparently,
I didn't know who he was.
Well, Philip Marshall is a career airline pilot. He had served as a contract pilot for the CIA and DEA during the Iran-Contra affair. He reportedly shot and killed his 2 teenage children, the dog, and then killed himself. And this apparent murder-suicide was discovered at their family home in Murphy's, California. Mary Ann sent me this earlier, and I didn't make the connection. But Philip Marshall has been identified as a former pilot for Eastern and United Airlines. He published a number of books, including 2 about 9/11 conspiracies. One was, folks, you might recall this, last year about this time, The Big Bamboozle was one of his books, and false flag at 9/11, how Bush, Cheney, and the Saudis created the post-9/11 world that was published 4 years earlier in 2008. I was aware of this. I mean, I'm not friends with, but certainly I knew this man from Coast to Coast AM, being part of Coast to Coast AM, and I've got to tell you, there's...
Was he anti-gun? Or, I mean, pro-gun, by any chance?
Well, that never really came up. But the issue here is his position on, his position on conspiracies, black bag operations.
Anti-administration, anti-government.
Well, not even anti-government, pro-truth. How's that? And I have a problem.
When I say anti-government, I mean our government, our corruption ring that we call a government. That when I say anti-government, I mean we're talking about the criminals in government.
Exactly. But I have a problem too in any type of homicide, suicide, homicide, or whatever. Usually, when a family dog is killed, that sends up red flags for me. Okay, even the dog. Now, again, I don't know all the facts on this, but I will say this. When you have a murder, a suicide, and they do happen, I'm not saying that they don't, they do happen, but we're suddenly finding ourselves in the midst of, it seems like a pandemic of mysterious murders and suicides. And, of course, Philip Marshall is the latest, 54 years old, and I've got to say that I'm not comfortable with the official story on this, and I do know people that know Mr. Marshall, and you do too, Joe. But the bottom line here is I think that we have to realize that something is not right. Things are not right. The official stories about these murders that are taking place, whether it's Chris Kyle or others, we need to be asking some hard questions, some very pertinent questions, and getting answers and demanding answers. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann Report. It is the film. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll bring up the outro, or the music, playing us out here for the top of the hour. We're going to a break. But people in the chat room have posted this, and they're right. And you check your email. Stan Dale, Hollydale sent us Stan's earthquake forecast map. Well, yes. Right where this hit is where he was pointing to, big time on his prediction map. So something to look at, definitely. Off in New Zealand there in 8.0, there has been a tsunami warning issued. This from the Wall Street Journal online. And it is triggering a tsunami warning for islands in the Pacific U.S., Watch Center said, and we'll have more on the other side. You're listening to the Hagmann Report.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Break Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP brick packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Hold on to your seats. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this live broadcast on Tuesday, February 5th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann, along with my co-host, my son, the investigator and investigator team. Investigators posing as talk show hosts. We are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Welcome back to this second hour of our broadcast. I'd like to start off this hour by responding to an email I got from Karen, who said this. I've been writing to you at another email. I've written several times about Sandy Hook, and I have not heard back. Folks, I've gotten some messages saying, why haven't you responded back to me? From people that I know. I mean, people that I normally have a dialogue with. In fact, Tamar Yona from Israel had asked me why I was ignoring her emails. The simple answer to that is a lot of times I don't get them. I don't know what the story is. But, Karen, I just want to say this. Karen R., that I didn't get any previous emails. So, folks, both Joe's email and my email is on the left-hand side of our front page. If you just simply click the name and either Joe or my name, and that'll open up a dialog box of your email client, and you just type in an email. Normally, when you do in that fashion, I will get the emails, but Karen writes this. I'm very disturbed by how the Sandy Hook story seems to have been dropped by everyone, and I don't understand why. It seems so wrong, and if something very wrong has been done right in front of the American people, I don't get it. I'm not saying that the people did not die, but everything is very wrong here, and I'm not sure why this thing is not being talked about and investigated further. If this thing was orchestrated by our government, then this is the highest of crimes I can imagine, especially if innocent children were slaughtered. If the children were not slaughtered, and this is all some kind of a sick, twisted ruse, then likewise, it's wrong as well. But we need more investigation. Why the media silence? I can't get it out of my head. Something is deeply wrong with Sandy Hook. And I have to agree. there are things that are wrong with Sandy Hook. So many things wrong. And there are so many things wrong with the recent murders. It's nuts. And I think it's our job to expose to the best of our ability what we know to be truth, what we know to be lies. And Sandy Hook is, in fact, part of it.
Yeah.
But Joey, I don't think Sandy Hook is going to be the end. Do you?
No, not at all. And one of the reasons Sandy Hook was not, pursued further by us, and we talked about it openly on the show, is that the different psychological operations that have been already completed upon the masses of people. And if you guys want just a little indicator of this, Anderson Cooper was caught giving an interview where it looks exactly like he was doing it in front of a green screen instead of in front of in Sandy Hook outside of a funeral. And he was called out by an audience member, and the whole audience booed him. And we saw how MSNBC changed the video to make it look like the dad who was standing up for gun rights was being mocked and heckled. They have conducted it wouldn't matter if we had a video of what really happened to disprove everything they say. The American people already have it in their mind because the news media put it there, and they're gullible enough to listen to it and believe it, that this happened and that guns are the problem. And it's not taken well by a lot of people who understand what's going on, obviously. And I just see it as a hard issue to argue, as we can no longer use facts because they're no longer relevant to people. Common sense is gone, reason's gone, logic's gone, facts mean nothing.
Well, I'm disturbed by the fact that we have not seen the video. There's been a lockdown on information, and of course, you're dealing with a very, shall we say, a very touchy subject when we're talking about the death of the murder, the tragic and needless murder of 20 children and 6 adults, and but the fact is, we have not seen the video of, we'll say, this perpetrator breaking in to the school, as we pointed out many times in the past. And all of the information that we should be entitled to is under a gag order. And I read something, and this was documented by 2 different sources, independent of one another. And I sent an email out to the one source who lives in that area, and it was confirmed as best I could to get an eyewitness confirmation that there were allegedly people setting up at the fire hall, which would be in front of the school at least a half hour before the initial 911 call of a shooting did take place. And don't forget, too, folks, the presence, as reported by the Newtown Bee, of an off-duty sniper or SWAT, special operations member in the woods adjacent to the school at the same time the shooting took place. What was that all about? And, of course, we heard nothing from that. So there are so many issues, Joe, that we need to look at, but when they shut the door.
Is it relevant now? Because would it change anyone's mind about what happened who is already locked into that system of TV, the dumbed down masses, I'll call them? Would it change their opinion if you showed them a video of Black Death Squad carrying out the attack, or a teacher doing it, or whatever happened? I think
it would. I don't think it would.
I don't think it would at all.
Then let's take our baseball and bat and go home, because
I'm not saying that.
No, I'm saying that because think about this.
We can have individual people. We can get aware certain people who have the mentality, the IQ, and the wherewithal to understand things are getting worse. And some people very slowly are snapping out of it. But the majority of people are going deeper into it, into the ignorance. And that's my point. Will the American people as a nation ever be together or united on any issue, ever? No.
No, and I agree with that.
No matter what, I don't care if they, said the whole thing was staged from front to back and admitted it on TV, had hearings, and people were brought to jail. I mean, seriously, our public is so disconnected from reality. It would not make a difference. You'd still have people running around there saying, you don't need 10 bullets to kill a deer anyway. Okay?
Obviously, when yeah. Well, yeah, and that's true. But I still think it's important because we're still looking. Think about this. This year will be the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination. It's kind of hard to believe. I mean, JFK would be 100 years old, basically. I'm not sure of his birthday, but close to it. And if you think about it, of course, he's frozen in time. But the point I'm trying to make here with the JFK assassination, we still talk about that. We still talk about the different theories and about the Oswald being a patsy. And here's the issue I have. That is a template, or perhaps it was a template for future assassinations, the RFK assassination of Martin Luther King, and other assassinations. And, of course, that became refined and was a template for Oklahoma City and the First World Trade Center bombing and, of course, ultimately 9/11. So Sandy Hook, by extension, exposure of whatever is wrong with Sandy Hook would also, as well, we should look at 9/11 and Oklahoma City and the 93 Trade Center bombing and all of these together, because isn't that what we're supposed to do? Isn't to bring truth and integrity to these subjects, to bring truth to the controversial aspects of this? I mean, because if we knew the truth behind Sandy Hook, if it didn't meet the official narrative, Joe, would that not make a difference today? I mean, if suddenly somebody came out with a video showing, like you said, Black Death Squads or whatever going in, would that not make a lot of people sit up and pay attention, or do you think it would be lost on everyone?
I think the majority of Americans are already lost no matter what comes out. They could come out and say, everything's been a scam, from the Federal Reserve System to, the war on terror to, it doesn't matter at this point. People are either in a political mindset where they're stuck in a left-right battle where they think their politician or their, Republican candidate is going to make a difference versus the Democratic candidate, or they don't care about politics or anything else that doesn't become self-absorbing to them. You know what I mean? We are seeing what it says in the Bible in the last days. And let me pull it up here. It is in, I think, 2 Thessalonians. I'm not sure, where it talks about the way people will behave in the end times, and the way people will act. I'm sorry, I think it was 2 Timothy here. 2 Timothy chapter 3. And in the last days, perilous times shall come, for men will be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. And it just goes on, and it says that these people will not given to sound doctrine. They will give into doctrine that fits their way of thinking. And it says there will come a time when they will not endure sound doctrine, but for their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned into fables. And not only that, in other parts of the New Testament, it talks about the deception that these people are in will be made even worse. The deceptions will be made to them, will be brought on to them even more, because they believed in the first deception.
Right. No, I understand that from a biblical point of view. I do. But at this point, I think that probably just as the deception is the most it's ever been in the history, in recent history anyway. Well, the deception from 1913 or from the beginning of the 20th century forward has been so unbelievably horrific, the deception in all aspects of our lives, whether you live in America, Canada, or in Europe or wherever, okay?
And it can be directly linked to TV, entertainment, movies, music. They have formulated ways. They study how human brains work. They study how humans interact and act, and they learned these behaviors and made a system to manipulate them to the point where they could manipulate our reality and the majority of people wouldn't notice, where they can bring in this totalitarian system, where they can publicly say on the news, yes, we're going to use drone strikes to kill Americans, and it's legal. And not only that, it's moral, and we need to do it to save Americans. And the people say, okay, let's do it. I mean, this is how dumb people are. And
well, you know what? I wouldn't say dumb. No.
Well, what is it? It's worse than ignorance. It's a willful ignorance.
Boy, I think I might have turned soft for a minute there, because that would be my characterization. Usually, the ignorance of the American people. But looking back through history, I'm more inclined to believe that people have been conditioned to such an extent that it's. See, and this is what an intelligence insider told to me. The lie is so big, the lie is so huge that people can't recognize the truth over the lie. We're living lies every day, and it's everything is built on a lie. And the bigger the lie, the easier it is to sell to the people, whether you're an American or somebody in the UK listening to this, or in Europe listening to this. So, but yeah, the ignorance of the American people, especially the American people, is quite high. And we got the letter from France that we read on air yesterday, from a listener in France who is from America, who said, looking from the outside in, after leaving America, it's hard to believe how much Americans will fall for, and I think it's true. But is it not, folks? Is it not our responsibility? Your responsibility as a listener, mine as a talk show host, Jones as a talk show host, is it not our responsibility to uncover the truth and to expose it? Is that not part of what we're supposed to be doing? And by exposing it, we can say this. So Sandy Hook, we did that to a certain degree. We didn't do a full-scale report because we saw the backlash that was coming and the setups that were there with the changing of dates for certain articles that could be changed back, where it looked like they were going to really crack down on conspiracy theorists there because of the way this thing was going. But no, we talked about the inconsistencies. We played the videos of the witnesses reporting a second person, third person running through the woods. We actually read from the Newtown Bee where they said the person in the woods with the gun that was found was an off-duty, out-of-state tactical SWAT team member. But, I mean, I've seen to the point where we'll talk about an issue even for days at a time
like the gun control thing, and see emails of people saying, "Well, are you going to talk about this?" So either
that's true. That's right. Yeah.
I mean, people have to understand. If you're not listening all the time, you might miss a lot, but that's okay. I just would say,
you know what, Joe? What we can do is this right now. With respect to some of the, including, I mean, this segues nicely off of Sandy Hook. Let's just look very briefly at the people who have mysteriously died here in the recent months and weeks and days and even years, perhaps, that under mysterious circumstances. We've got, of course, Chris Kyle, the latest, the author of The American Sniper. And I'm just going to tick these off real quick, Joe and the listeners. But think about this. Chris Kyle, author of The American Sniper, this past weekend. John Noveske, the owner of Noveske Rifle Works. His vehicle was run off the road. 2 gun makers killed in 2 days and really no answers. Keith Ratliff. He's well known for a series of videos on YouTube. FPS Russia. You folks know who this gentleman is. Found with a single shot to his head. Aaron Schwartz, 26, computer genius, computer prodigy, co-creator of RSS and Reddit. You folks know who this man is. You might not know him by name or by face or whatever, but he's affected your computer use. Supposedly committed suicide after Obama DOJ harassment. Kill list critic, if you will. Ilea Z. I'm just going to, Ilea Z. A 22-year-old co-founder of the startup social network Diaspora. That site has been described as an anti-Facebook site, which, and if you are familiar with Facebook, you know the relationship between Facebook and the CIA. Navy SEAL Commander Job Pierce, 42. Apparently, a commander dies. He currently died now. Apparently not. Denied. Apparently he denied it. Apparently he committed suicide in Afghanistan. SEAL Team 4 commander in Afghanistan. Stephanie Moses. She was the NYPD sergeant photographed with Obama at the 9/11 ceremony, found dead, yes, in an apparent suicide. Rafael Prieto, a Secret Service agent, apparent suicide while under investigation. The Krim children. Folks, remember this. CNBC executive, and Joe, you talked about this at length. The CNBC executive children who were murdered one day after the CNBC reported $43 trillion bankster lawsuit. And this is where the police, the nanny, stabbed herself upon the mother's arrival. The CNBC article preceded this occurrence, the death of these children, and then it was removed the following day. You can search the Spire Law Group. Then you've got Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Ravel, I believe his name is, and Sergeant Bradley Atwell. They died in the Camp Bastion attack 3 days after the Benghazi attack. We didn't hear about that, and others, and I can go on and on and on. That's just going back to 9/11 of last year. So, SEAL Team 6, Donald Perry, get this, folks, have you heard about Donald Perry? The Chick-fil-A public relations director found dead of a heart attack. This has some weird connection to, just Rahm Emanuel and other issues. And we can go on. Victoria Windsor, blogger, researcher into ancestry, she reported that she had found evidence that the records of Obama's mother and grandmother had been tampered with. Now, she died from sudden illness. And we can go on and on and on and on. Breitbart, Andrew Breitbart. It's amazing how many people are using Breitbart as a verb now. So, Joe, where are we at with this? With all of these deaths? And
well, there's no coincidence.
No.
And we're seeing it happen, and people are not only with deaths, these deaths, but the excuses that some of the people accused are, especially in the sniper case, post-traumatic stress disorder veteran, which they being the Department of Homeland Security, the government, has labeled as the enemy, as the number one threat. Also, there was a hostage situation that involved somebody kidnapping a kid who was apparently a prepper. You see this even going back to Sandy Hook. They labeled this Nancy Lanza, the mother of this kid, the accused kid, as a prepper. And they have marginalized, labeled, and are finishing their list, if they're not already finished, to put us into categories. Are you Christian? And I bet it's a detail to the point where, okay, if these people are Christian, which ones will turn away from that to, go with our new system, and which ones won't? I'm sure it's that detailed. I'm sure that's how much information they have, because they've been using secret spy capabilities for years to monitor and watch everything we do or say, just recently admitting some of it. But it's going to get worse, and it's going to happen faster, and it's going to continue.
Exactly, and I think everyone listening to this broadcast understands that. I think what we need to do here is we really need to put our efforts into educating the people that we can educate, help people that we can help, and really, look, I don't know if we can get our country back. I don't know if it's too late. But one thing we can do is make a difference and expose what we believe to be or find to be the truth through investigation with integrity, and not being hamstrung by any political agenda. And that's why we talk about this unbiased 3 hours of unbiased truth. And this is all part of it. And I see people talking too about various other issues like Agenda 21 and how the globalist agenda, what we're dealing with here. There are so many things right now. We are under so much of an attack in all aspects of our life. I mean, we are actually playing checkers while the people who are all these power brokers are playing chess, and three-dimensional chess at that. So, and by the way, Joe, we didn't talk about this earlier, but I think it's important for people to really kind of circle back to what's taking place over in the Middle East, because Russia is warning of a very, very big war if West, that means America, meddles with the Middle East, as Iran orders Arab neighbors not to cozy up to the United States. We had talked about this 4 months before Hillary Clinton and before the chemical weapons became an issue. And folks, we're at the precipice of a third world war.
You just reminded me of something. Did you see that video about North Korea? The propaganda video they released?
I did not.
Showing a nuclear bomb hitting the U.S.
No.
Yeah, the North Korea did release a video that showed it attacking the United States with multiple weapons. North Korea released this video of missile attack on America. Used Michael Jackson's soundtrack, "We Are the World," and it says there's bizarre footage uploaded on the Secret of State's official website, and I think the site I just opened is going to play this video. So if you hear noise, I'll shut it up real quick here. No. The propaganda move depicts a smiling lad dreaming of a regime rocket being launched into the air and traveling to America. The 3.5-minute video then shows a mystery city full of skyscrapers being attacked by multiple explosions with the Stars and Stripes flag fluttering in the background.
Well, Joe, let me ask you a question here. We've got North Korea we've got China. Both of these countries are rattling their sabers for, while America is otherwise preoccupied. We've got the Middle Eastern countries threatening to go at it. What's your belief based on your research? And let me interview you for a second. You've done a lot of research here. You've looked at a lot of official documents, government documents. What's your belief what do you think is going to take place here in America?
Korea?
Well, no, I'm talking about, I guess globally here.
Okay.
What's going to go first?
Well, let me start with North America, or North Korea in this video, and the people wondering about, will they launch a rocket at us? I say no and no. Not only can't they, I don't think they ever would, unless they were with a coalition of nations, including China and other people that had their backing. But as far as, what the government documents say, we're in a lot of trouble. You're a terrorist if you believe in the Constitution, Christianity, or anything good. Therefore, you will be interned, re-educated, and chipped or killed. This is based on all their own documents. And that's just the quick and short of it. But really, we'll see a lot of things happen. I hope we have time to see things happen, or have time, at least, longer than the way things look to be playing out so rapidly. But the economy is the number one thing we need to watch for, because if our economy goes, that's automatic, guaranteed chaos in the streets. And there's new numbers out today. New record of Americans on disability hits a record high for the 192nd straight month. 8,830,026 Americans are on disability. And that's 192 straight months. The number has increased since December 1996. I think that's right. We're seeing the watch the dollar. It could trigger the next crisis. This from CNBC. Expectations of an end to an ultra-easy U.S. monetary policy are likely to set in during the second half of 2013, triggering a bull run in the dollar that could last for 5 years, say independent economist Andy Zai. And this, he argues, could lead to a crisis in emerging markets as hot money inflows unwind. The U.S. economy has begun to show signs of life again. So this whole article is based on the notion that we're in a recovery right now. Okay.
Okay. Well, stop right there for a second, because I think, and I want to tell people that my DHS source, and this article, and once again I want to thank Marianne for her contribution and her able assistance to help me get this done. This is coming out tonight or first thing in the morning. It's going to come out tonight on HomelandSecurityUS.com, and that's information from my DHS source, and Canada Free Press hopefully at the same time or sometime shortly thereafter. But here's what my DHS source said about this. And if I may, because Joe, I think this is so important. You raised this point, and I think this is so important. One of the conversations, okay, just to let people know, we've had ongoing discussions. My source, Rosebud, that's the code name, super secret, code name is Rosebud. But the source said this, and let me quote this exactly, because these interviews actually were taped. And by the way, those listening, and I know that we have federal agencies and agents listening to this broadcast and all of our broadcasts, these recordings are safely put in various locations. And there's this theory of a mutually assured destruction should anything happen to the should anything happen to the source, obviously there will be consequences to that, and my source is pretty cagey and aware of the possibilities. But that said, here's what was said about the economy, and once again, this is a direct quote. Okay, here it is right here. I asked him this. During our previous contact, you said that we should listen to Obama's comments about the economy. I mean, the inaugural speech. What's so significant about that? My source responded this way. Well, this is perhaps the most important issue people need to understand. There will be and was talk of a recovery and stronger economy, but it's all propaganda. As you heard me say in the recording you just played, and I played a recording of the previous talk, the complete inaugural address will be a Baghdad Bob moment. And it was. Many economists will use false figures and statistics to deceive American people. People must not downplay the importance of the economic aspect of this address, meaning the inaugural address. The sudden collapse of the U.S. dollar, however it actually plays out, and everything that goes with it, like the social chaos and riots, will be just one part of a plan that was set in motion a long time ago. Now, I asked him, I said, are you getting this from your current intelligence sources? Frankly, I'm not sure I understand the connection between DHS and what's going on with the economy. It seems like it should be separate. And he replied, well, what's not to understand? The economic devastation that will take place is an attack, a planned attack on the United States. Just look at it that way. This regime already knows the outcome, which is the debasement of our national currency. And he said, like I said, it's been in the works most recently since the 1990s. A collapse does not happen without a lot of pain. People losing everything in their retirement accounts, savings, and so on. Don't you think that will cause one heck of a national security problem? And who is running our national security or domestic security? Well, it's DHS. So, and one of the reasons he said I wanted to include more recent information into our discussion relates to something you did last month, he said, after our talk. I know that you said you did not want to source your own work, this gentleman says, but there was one important radio program you did that caused a very angry response inside the DHS. And I asked him how so. And Joe, you want to take a stab at what that was?
Preparations for civil war?
No. Well, kind of relative to that, he said, you had a financial insider on your program who went by some letter, like the first or last letter of his name. And I responded, yes, that was a V, who was a source for Steve Quayle. We did a program at the beginning of January, I think, and then I looked it up, and it was actually January 11th, 2013. Folks, you can go back to January 11th, 2013. Just follow the RSS link on the right-hand side of our page. It'll take you to all of our programs, and you can download that. But that, he said, that was a huge revelation that really peeved the DHS people. And why? Well, because I said...
I can answer this one correctly.
Well, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Because he talked about a few key issues. One being, watch Japan. They're going to do, they're going to make a move in the currency war. And as soon as Monday came around, he was on a Friday. Monday came, boom, we see an article. Japan could start currency war. The next week, Russia, bang, could currency war. All these articles started popping up, exactly what this insider was referencing and talking about.
And you had to point that out to me. And folks, I've got to tell you something. It was almost like I'm looking at a blank screen sometimes. And Joe had to point out these various hits from this financial insider, this V.
It's because I come through news headlines, like you write articles. That's where I become useful, and you're not looking through each and every headline the way I am. So we chalk it up to that.
I got to tell you, this is what he said, and folks, you're getting this before it's actually in print. Okay, so if you're listening to this program live, he said, I said, but that information, meaning that program, had nothing to do with national security. I mean, how would this relate to DHS? And of course, you answered this correctly, but my source says, now you're giving me a headache, at which time he laughed, and I remember that laugh. It wasn't exactly a happy laugh. It was one where, basically telling me, come on, would you just get with the program? But anyway, he said, let me spell it out for you. And this is the crux of everything. We have Obama, or whatever his real name is, in the Oval Office. You said it before that America is a captured operation. Well, it is, and every top-level operative at the Department of Homeland Security and Justice knows it. They have his dossier. And by the way, folks, he has theirs as well. But he said, think about Obama's mother working in microfinance with Timothy Geithner's father. What are the odds? And that's just one coincidence. And he said a lot of people they're not going to get this until it's too late, or maybe they'll never get it. But take a good look at Obama and the people who surround him. Look at the 2008 economic crisis under Bush. Look at the run-up to where we're at today. The orchestrated boom of the 1990s, the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act signed into law under Clinton that changed the complexion of our domestic economy. Look at the people who are still around, even today. The architects of this, it's a big lie. The game has been rigged, and all the insiders know this. Look at the continuity of agenda since Bush Sr. And that says a lot if you look at that. And
it goes much back than Bush Sr. But
it does.
It's more open. It becomes public knowledge, public record at that point.
Well, he said this. He said, now listen to what I'm telling you. He said, this is a continuing operation that involves many of the same people on both sides of the aisle in Washington. This is one of the reasons why no one wants to talk about Obama's past. No one will get it off of dead center. Everyone has been compromised. Obama is the product of a continuing intelligence operation. He was put in power to oversee the dismantling of the United States, with the economy being the linchpin of our destruction. And that's what he said. He said everything else is secondary. Obama, Jared, the Clintons, they're in constant contact with high-level operatives inside the DHS. I see it every day, he said. Perhaps not directly in all cases, but through their own contacts. They're working together to see to it that the U.S. economy is brought down, robbing the people of their wealth. Folks, your wealth, the money you earned, and then blaming it on partisan politics for the upcoming crash. And for the first time in recent history, you're going to see people hungry out in the streets. Those unprepared, or those thinking this is all, baloney, well, they're wrong. Desperate people begging for food. Think Katrina, he said. Think Katrina, but on a national scale. That's what's being planned for Americans. Notice he didn't say this is going to be the result. This is what's being planned for Americans. And a few people are willing to see what's happening, or willing to believe it. Now, here's where DHS, my sources and the information comes in, he says, and I'll just conclude it with this, and you can read the rest at HomelandSecurityUS.com and CanadaFreePress.com. Everyone is looking at the gun problem in America today. The fights over the Second Amendment, state laws that go against the Constitution, blame it on Sandy Hook or Colorado or whatever. Tell people we need to disarm. We need to be disarmed because it's for the children. It's all baloney. Most people know it's all baloney, and I'm putting baloney in there. He did not use that word. But that's where their rational assessment stops. Why do you think the people in power need to disarm the public? It's not because of Sandy Hook. It's not because of Aurora. It's because they're planning an economic collapse, and an armed and informed populace is a danger to their plan. There you go, Joe.
That's right.
So you hit it on the head. I mean, you said it right from the beginning, but that's from the DHS source.
And You reminded me of an article I didn't get to yesterday that I really wanted to get to. And folks, if you want to call in, 661-244-9839. We'll be taking your calls in the third hour. But this article yesterday that came out, the State Department is recruiting future diplomats at Muslim Brotherhood jihadist event. Wow. Can you say the lady's name, Clinton's assistant?
Oh, Huma Abedin.
Okay. Huma Abedin. Because one is Huma Abedin just isn't enough. The Obama administration is covertly recruiting Muslims to work at the State Department as foreign service officers representing the United States in one of 265 American embassies, consulates, and diplomatic missions worldwide. It appears to be part of the administration's Muslim outreach effort, which includes a variety of controversial moves. Ward held a 90-minute seminar at a recent convention sponsored by two groups, the Muslim American Society and the Islamic Circle of North America, with known ties to radical Islam. Both nonprofits are associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, which is known as the parent organization of Hamas and Al-Qaeda. In fact, the Investigative Project on Terrorism reports that the MAS was founded as a U.S. chapter of the Muslim Brotherhood, which strives to indoctrinate. But here you go, Obama's Muslim outreach effort.
Well, once again, and ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to sound bigoted. I don't want to sound racist. Well, it wouldn't be racist. I guess it would be more bigoted. But honestly, after World War II, or even during our World War II involvement, if we would have elected a president, Hirohito, whatever, where's the? Are you being serious? And yet, 7 years after 9/11, we elect a president by the name of Barack Hussein Obama. Is that bigoted, folks? Am I wrong in saying that we have a cultural Muslim that we elected?
You're not wrong. Okay, no, you're not wrong, because we know what he has been doing. If he stuck to his promises he made during the campaign and was a good person, a moral person, we wouldn't have this financial mess. We wouldn't be talking about drone strikes. We wouldn't be talking about guns being taken away, because he would have been the decent person to stand against the tyranny. But no, it obviously is deeper than that, and we need to, pray for Obama, because he is just a tool being used to put things in place. He is the face of this agenda right now, and will be until his term's up, if we get that far.
Yeah, according to the DHS source, Obama was put into office, and with the full knowledge of George Bush, and of course George Herbert Walker Bush, and certainly of William Jefferson Clinton and Hillary Diane Rodham Clinton. He was put into power. He was selected, and everybody knew. See, everyone's in on it, and they're laughing at us. The power brokers.
Yeah.
To me, that's unforgivable. I mean, not unforgivable, but to me, that's not right.
Go back to what you read at the beginning of the show. Look at where, and I don't have this in front of me, and I didn't read it, but I remember specifically when you read it, it talked about how these attacks were going to come and how we need to spiritually prepare for them.
Yeah.
And it referenced Ephesians.
Yes.
And it's clear there is not a physical solution. There is not a man-made solution to the type of tyranny that has enveloped this earth. It's got to come from the Lord if it's going to change. And for that to change, the hearts and minds of the people will have to turn towards the Lord and repent. And I mean all people. It doesn't matter, American, or Canadian, Hawaiian, no, I'm just kidding. Australian, it doesn't matter what part of the earth you're from. Christians as a whole need to become more disciplined, more in tune with the Lord and His Word and what He wants for us to do, especially as individuals and as leaders, because we all are leaders if we are in the Lord.
And the emails that I do get, and you get, Joe, I mean, personally, I get very uplifted by the emails because we can see, and even in the months since May when we went independent and became affiliated with the Christians United Broadcasting Network, and I want to thank Troy, but even since May, and it just blows my mind, and I'm not blowing our own horn here, beep, beep, I guess, but to see 3 million downloads of our program in January from where we came from. But what's that reflective of? You know what that's reflective of? That's reflective of a thirst and a hunger for the truth. And if we can somehow fulfill that and help everybody be the leaders that they are. I mean, everyone listening to this, as I've said so many times, you are born for this day and time. You've got a job to do. Everybody listening to this program, you've got a job to do. You might not know what it is right now. Man, it took me half a century to figure out my own name, it feels like sometimes, really, to really realize, okay, we've got a job to do. And Joe, of course, was quicker on the uptake than I certainly was, understanding his role. But it's important for everyone listening to this program, whether you're sitting in a diner or sitting in front of your computer or listening to this as you're driving on your phone, we've got a job to do. And the sooner we I don't know, spiritually turn ourselves over. And Joe, you're more masterfully eloquent at this. As soon as we turn ourselves and surrender to God, the sooner we'll understand what that job is, because we can't fight that. We can't fight.
We have to rid ourselves of ourselves. We have to rid ourselves of all our bad behaviors, our ways, our thoughts, everything that has been taught to us through the world. And we have to become pure of heart, and we have to constantly repent and remain obedient and constantly work towards being better. And then from there, if you're doing that in your own life, it will manifest in ways you never imagined. And people, you'll be helping people. You'll be doing different things and affecting people's lives in ways that, maybe money couldn't or anything else couldn't, but that love and grace that is given by the Lord through you, it shines to other people. And that is really the key for an individual, is to always be striving for the perfection, not of a man's idea of perfection, but of the Lord's idea of perfection.
That's very well said. The Lord's idea of perfection, not man's, but God's idea for perfection. One thing, too, before we hit the top of the hour, and I know that we've talked the program kind of went sideways, but it in a way, in terms of how things played out. But and folks, I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl on Sunday or if you saw it on television or whatever, but something kind of struck me, is because we did our Sunday program, and prior to me arriving at the studio, I looked at a group of people who were watching the Super Bowl. And I don't know, I just stood there for a second. Out of nowhere, it came this vision of the Roman Colosseum and the Romans and this distraction, this entertainment of the masses, while Rome burned. I mean, obviously that's not the correct analogy or the correct series of, but you get the idea. The people, how many gazillions of people watched the Super Bowl and could tell you everything about the players and about the coaching staff and about the various stats. And Joe, you were like this, but had no idea outside of that realm, outside of that entertainment, that Coliseum entertainment of what's really going on. And it just took me, again, you know how you have those moments where you just think, wow.
Yeah, the moments of clarity.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Joe, I'll tell you what, I know I dominated the first couple of hours of the program, and for that in a way, I apologize, but thank you for allowing me to do that. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. This is a live broadcast. Today is the 5th day of February 2013. Time has flown by. Just want to remind people, Thursday, Daniel Holdings, very special guest. We're working on some, folks, you're not going to believe some of the people that are lining up, we're lining up for the program in the future. We're right back after these messages. Stay with us. Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to direct you to one of our great sponsors, and I mean great sponsors, Granlund Firearms of British Columbia. There's a picture of Granlund Firearms on our website, HomelandSecurityUS.com. Click on the picture. Pay them a visit. They're constantly updating their website. They've got some of the most wonderful pictures of British Columbia on their website, but that's not why you should go there. They've got just a complete inventory of hunting supplies, specials. You know, one of my favorites is a black men's T-shirt with a deer head. I'm not a hunter, but it's just a great T-shirt. Small to 2XL, $20. You can't beat it. Camel caps. If you're a hunter, camel caps. I don't look at any kind of headgear, so except the bicycle helmet that I use when I walk around the house. But folks, they've got an amazing supply of hunting equipment, of weapons, and if you're lucky enough to live up in Canada, certainly they can be shipped up there without a problem, and certainly through some paperwork, I believe the weapons can be shipped into America as well, depending on your location and other things, and perhaps even planetary alignment. I don't know. If you're in America and you're in the market for a firearm, certainly give them a call. Carl will be glad to help you out, answer all of your questions. But the gun stock list, it's always updated. They've got some amazing deals. And, of course, Carl's a fantastic writer. If you are a hunter, you like to read stories about big game hunting and interesting hunting, grab the book Tree Beyond the River, Cougar Hunting on Vancouver Island. I'll tell you what, my neighbor picked it up the other day, looked at it, read like a paragraph and said, "Hey, can I borrow this book?" And I said, "No, I'll get your own." But actually, I did let him borrow it. And he had just talked to him earlier today, and he said, "You know what? Fantastic book." And he's not a hunter, but he does like stories like that. So anyway, Granlund Firearms, pay him a visit. GranlundFirearms.com. That's GranlundFirearms.com. And while you're up there in the virtual world of their website, sign their guest book, and tell them Doug and Joe Hagmann sent you.
Doug Hagmann, one guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final hour of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Tuesday, February 5th, 2013. Give us a call, 661-244-9839. We'll be taking your calls and more. I'm going to go to some news audio clips here, a couple of short ones. We didn't get to Panetta yesterday, did we? Where he talks about Benghazi. Okay. I'm going to play first this Converse. Did you see this? This Representative Converse talking in a Senate or a committee meeting today. This is what he says in a bipartisan House member meeting on immigration policy. Democratic Representative John Conyers of Michigan, the Judiciary Committee ranking member. Listen to this.
I hope no one uses the term illegal immigrants here today. Our citizens are not illegal. The people in this country are not illegal. They're out of status. They're new Americans that are immigrants. And I think that we can forge a path to citizenship that will be able to pass muster. We've got a senatorial bipartisan support working very nicely thus far.
That's it?
Yeah, there you have it. I hope no one uses the term. So how about this? Anybody out there who has a gun who doesn't have a license for it, it's not illegal. It's just you're just a displaced registerer. How about that? That's the logic that is being used here.
So if all of the listeners out there are driving without a driver's license, we're not really driving illegally. We're operating a motor vehicle without the proper documentation.
Yeah, you are just you're an undocumented driver or an unregistered driver, and out of restriction or out of whatever you. I mean, it's just so ridiculous anymore. I don't know what to say, but yeah, that was Representative John Conyers of Michigan, Democratic in Michigan, saying the term. I hope that no one uses the term illegal immigrants here today.
Well,
they're not illegal immigrants. The people in this country are not illegal. They're out of status.
Okay. Well, what we're going to see, and I think that we're going to see something very much. Well, actually, this is according to another source who's got some connections to the some people in the House and Senate. And I've gotten information from this individual before, saying that they're going to pass what the equivalent of a DREAM Act. And remember what Johnson did back in the 60s. There is something very similar to what Johnson did with amnesty and pushing, bringing people into the country. So we're going to see the further dilution of our society, of our American Republic. And people might say, well, gee, that's kind of, I don't know, what would you call it? That's kind of racist or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, doesn't this affect the moral fabric, the moral composition, the actual demographic composition of our country? What does that do to America by allowing more like 20 million, not 11 million, like the same, but 20 million people to just be absorbed? And what about the Cloward Piven strategy when we get these people, like we talked about this last night, Joe, Cloward Piven on steroids? This, it's going to overwhelm the system.
Yeah, no, it is insane to see the way that things are being talked about, the terminology being used, just in your face. For those who are unable to understand, they can see right through this lack of logic, this lack of common sense. I mean, look, we have a kid who got arrested or had the school locked down in Alexandria. They arrested a 10-year-old boy for brandishing a toy gun in school, okay?
Yeah.
They arrested or shut down or suspended a student just a few days ago for drawing a gun, like a 6-year-old. This is another case. I think it might have been yesterday. For drawing a gun. Paper, okay? That's how crazy these people are. Like, if you draw a gun, is it going to come to life? And, could it be used in a crime? Meanwhile, on some good news here before we go to calls, this story I definitely wanted to talk about briefly. There's two things. One, the Liberty Coalition forms to support sheriffs fighting gun control. A new coalition of law enforcement officials and liberty-minded organizations led by former Arizona Sheriff Richard Mack is joining forces to defend freedom, with goals that include supporting the hundreds of constitutional sheriffs across America who promise to defend the rights of their constituents from the Obama administration's lawless assault on the Constitution. As one of the projects, the Alliance is sending letters to every sheriff in the United States to find out and publicize where they stand on the Second Amendment. So this is good. And it goes on to say another key of the aim of the coalition is to recruit more chief law enforcement officers, particularly sheriffs, but also state and local officials as well, to defend Americans' unalienable gun rights. And they already have close to 300 county sheriffs from all over the county, and 6 state sheriffs associations had publicly announced their intentions to protect the Second Amendment in their respective jurisdictions. The numbers are growing daily, and members and leaders of the new coalition hope to keep this trend accelerating. So a little bit of good news amongst all the stuff that's going on. And folks, I just want to make a side note here. I know that the earthquake happened. Keep the people in your prayers. I don't know how accurate this information is. I've seen some things posted where a couple of villages were wiped out completely in the main epicenter of that earthquake. So we got to keep those people in our prayers and hope that whatever they're
tell us again where that earthquake took place, Joe. If you know.
No,
wow. And Stan Dale, who's a very good friend of the program, we'll be talking with him shortly, not on air but off air, to get his take on what's next, because it seems like this is just, is right. It was within his prediction. And I shouldn't say prediction. It's based on scientific elements or aspects. So we're going to have more of these.
You want to know something weird? I was looking at, there was a series of earthquakes in Santa Cruz. I couldn't tell you if it was a couple days ago or if it was just very recently. And I was looking right at the Santa Cruz Islands, and I'm like, wow, that's a big pile of quick earthquakes that happened there. And that was the last I thought of it until I saw that today, and then I remembered, I was looking at that, and that's probably what Stan Dale pointed out in his latest map he sent us, and that he posts on his site at, what is it, standale.com?
Standale.com, right. And millenniummark.com. But standale.com, that's where to go. Stan and Holly Dale, great people, and they've got a lot of, and Stan, I got to tell you, I'm going to tell you, if he called me up and said, "Hey, there's going to be an earthquake based on my calculations, right down in your driveway," I'd believe him. I'd be making preps to bug out. He's that. His I don't know, what would it be? His hit ratio, I guess. I mean, that's a bad kind of term, but it's really high. So, and we'll let people know, especially in tomorrow's program, what Mr. Dale, what's next in terms of what he's seeing. Before we go to calls, that was indeed keep your prayers. But let me just hit this real quick, folks. You know how, and I heard this today, and I just wanted to scratch or pull my hair out. This was on the news. It was the local news, I believe, talking about how we're in a recovery. Wall Street is actually getting better, and there's 10 signs. This, according to Market Watch, 10 signs that Wall Street is not getting better. And just real quickly, look with fresh eyes. You're encouraged, and ask yourself if America's profits virus obsession made us a better place since 2008. That's, to me, that's kind of a very toxic sentence. But think about this. There are the author of this was with Morgan Stanley in the 70s. They ran an ad, and folks, think about this. If God wanted to do, and this was the ad, if God wanted to do a financing, he would call Morgan Stanley. You talk about a very narcissistic self-interest with a God complex. That describes current Wall Street to a T. They're pathological liars. They're incapable of honesty with even their own investors. They're obsessive. They're about secrecy, guilt, non-disclosure, borderline split personalities within the market system. They're ignoring all conflicts of interest. Compliments, by the way, of Paulson and Company, compliments of the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. They're in total denial. And I have to say this, I would also put this directly on the lap of Christian Dave Ramsey, who I had a tremendous amount of respect for until I heard him talk about how anyone who would dare say, take your money out of the stock market or 401k, invest in gold and silver, that you guys are nuts. You're nuts. You're conspiracy theorists. And disregarding completely the whole concept of the Federal Reserve and fiat currency. Definitely do your research on Dave Ramsey, and I would, I'm not cutting him down intentionally just to do it. I'm saying a lot of people listen to him, and if you listen to him, man, as I have, and I mean, he's got a lot of good ideas, though, to how to handle money, of course, with his Christian Peace University, but that said, or Financial Peace University, but boy, I'll tell you, look at Wall Street. Conspiracies, cover-ups, frauds. They feign humanity and fake apologies. Isn't that what we're seeing? And especially with MF Global, John Corzine, look at that, the $1.6 billion heist. And who's in jail? Not anybody. So, Joe, I just want to get that in. Kind of a downer, though, but thought I'd better mention that.
I got one interesting piece of news I want to hit on here before we go to calls. And I don't know if you've heard about this. Obama to visit Israel for first time as president. Have you heard about this yet?
Yes. I'm wondering, folks, what do you think about this? What's the deal with him doing this?
I'll tell you what I think. He should stay away. He didn't go his first term. He should stay away his second term. It just seems to. It's just the worst timing, We see us funding Israel's enemies, and I'm sure there's an element of the Israeli government that understands and is helping that along for whatever reason. But either way, Obama will travel to Israel next month. The White House confirmed Tuesday. According to Israeli media outlets, Obama is scheduled to arrive on March 20th. White House officials will not confirm the date, but Tommy Vietor, a spokesman for the National Security Council, said Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu discussed a possible visit in a phone call last month. It will be Obama's first trip to Israel as president, and comes as Israeli and Palestinian leaders are at odds over how to restart peace negotiations that have been dormant for more than 2 years now. So, everybody just keep that in the back of your mind.
Will the land of Israel accept him? You know,
I don't know. Well, there's a lot of questions that could be asked about this visit.
But you know what I think, though, and this is what I've heard from Israel, from a source at Israel National Radio, and we're good friends with Israel National Radio. You know, whether it's Tobias Singer, Tamar Yonah, and others. But here's the thing: the purpose is to divide Jerusalem and make it an international city. It's not going to work, folks, and that's going to be the flashpoint, at least for Israel, for Jerusalem, for Israel. That's when Obama says we need to make Jerusalem an international city. But isn't it funny, since 1948, not one of our presidents had the guts or the moral integrity to put our embassy in Jerusalem? They leave it in Tel Aviv. Nowhere else in the world are American embassies. I mean, everywhere else in the world, the embassies are located in the capital city of the country, except for Israel. And that, to me, is a travesty. And I just go back to Genesis 12, verse 3.
Yeah. Also, 7 million will lose insurance under Obama health care law. The health care law will push 7 million people out of their job-based insurance coverage, nearly twice the previous estimate, according to the latest estimates from the Congressional Budget Office released Tuesday. CBO said that the year's tax cuts have changed in the incentives for businesses and made it less attractive to pay for insurance, meaning that fewer will decide to do so. Instead, they'll choose to pay the penalty or the tax of the government's mandate, totaling $13 billion in higher tax fees over the next decade. Also, on tax news, and then we'll go right to the calls. Obama calls for a new round of tax increases. This from Fox News. Obama insists proposed tax hikes are vital to economic recovery. President Drone Assassin called for a new round of tax increases to offset the looming budget sequester and to help close the annual $1 trillion deficit. The tax increases needed to pay the economic recovery, or needed to keep the economic recovery going. Obama claimed, even though the economy apparently contracted by 0.1% during the last 3 months of 2012. So there goes the notion again that we are under an economic recovery. Remember, Harry Reid last week said we're in a recovery. We have watch for the dollar collapse and crisis, but it'll build up. The dollar will build up because we're in a recovery first. All this talk of recovery. How long have we heard about us being in a recovery now? How long has it been, really? Like 4 years, 6 years, 28 years?
Yeah, the
problems never stopped.
No, of course not.
Because the practices of the root of the problems, the behaviors that brought about the problems, never were changed. They were made worse. And people think it's going to get better and it's going to be okay. And I listen to Dave Ramsey and all my friendly talk show hosts on Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, or any other Nazi communist news network in this nation. They say it's going to be okay, so I'll believe them.
Well, folks, I'd be interested, too, in hearing what you've done. If you've done anything, such as removing or taking out your 401k or whatever retirement plan you had, if you've done this in the recent weeks or months or even the past year, for fear of losing it all. And you know, this reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine who has money invested in, I'm not sure if they're mutual funds or I'm not even sure what you would call it when you have a portfolio at a stockbroker with a stockbroker. I never had one, so I don't know what the proper term is. But I asked them. I said, "Aren't you a little afraid of losing it all, given the fact that it's in the stock market?" He said, "No." I mean, and this gentleman has a lot of money.
And think about this. I know this isn't what your guy's saying, or maybe it is, but we have the illusion of freedom, right?
Right.
Well, we have the illusion of wealth now, too, because our money is worthless as toilet paper.
The illusion of wealth, that's perfect.
I mean, it is. It's all a straw man. It's built with sand foundation from the beginning, knowing it would fail at the end, knowing this would be the outcome.
Man, the illusion of wealth, I think that probably sums it up the best, because you see people out there, they're still, you can walk into any store, really, and they're overflowing with fresh fruits and vegetables, and of course your big box stores and 50-inch televisions, and you see people carrying them out, and it seems like everything is fine, but yet under the surface it's not fine. And how hard are these people going to be hit mentally? And even they're going to take a spiritual hit too when the bottom falls out.
Definitely. And like you said, that's one of we played a couple weeks ago when you were out. I played a audio from 1985 of G. Edward Griffin interviewing a former KGB, and you've seen this video on infiltration.
Yeah.
And he talks about, the people who are the normal, what we would call normalcy bias today, or normalized to the situation, will not understand it, even if they were taken to the concentration camps and shown the concentration camps, still wouldn't believe it until the military boot hits them personally. Then they'll understand it, but by that time it'll be too late.
No, you're right. And when the boot of tyranny is on your throat and not your neighbor's, what are you going to do?
Right. Let's go to some phone calls. We got people on hold, and
thanks for waiting
and ignoring them. So let's see. We're going to go to, thanks for your patience, guys, area code 205 first. 205, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Very well.
Great. Hey, this is Ken in Birmingham. I hope you can hear me okay.
Oh, Ken, great to hear from you. We can hear you just fine.
Great.
What's
okay.
up?
Yeah, my Google Voice service there is working pretty good, yes. Yes, I used to talk to you a couple of times on Friday afternoon when you made a guest appearance on the Dr. Laurie Ross show.
Yeah, Ken. Actually, I miss, I'll tell you what, I miss appearing with Dr. Roth on our usual Fridays. We did that for, 4 or 5 years. It was just a great time. And folks, Ken, if you can just indulge me for a second, I just want to say this. Those of you who know Laurie Roth, know her history, know her, know that she's a great American patriot. She's a great constitutional. She stands for everything we stand for, and does attempt to get to the truth. She runs a nationally syndicated show called The Roth Show. That's therothshow.com. 26 stations. She's trying to actually expand that reach. But I got to tell you something. She's fallen on some very difficult times, because there are people who want to shut her up as well, and who have pulled sponsorship from her. And I would urge everyone to give prayerful consideration, if you have the means, to certainly support Laurie Roth, to allow her to continue her radio enterprise. Just visit therothshow.com and give her some assistance if you have the ability to do so. And because she's a good friend of the program and a good friend of godly conservative cause. Ken, I didn't mean to take your time, but go ahead, my friend.
That's all right, great. I'll try to hurry here. A couple of quick things. Thank you for playing that cut from, I believe it was Mr. Conyers, about people in this country are not illegal. I wonder what part of the word illegal he doesn't understand.
Great point.
Yeah, by his standards, I guess, then when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans and we had all the looters that were looting all the stores down there, those weren't looters. Those were just undocumented shoppers, I guess.
Yes.
Anyway, hey,
shoppers.
Yeah. Regarding the economic situation, I'd like to point out to you a website, a great website. It's www.shadow, S-H-A-D-O-W, shadow stats, S-T-A-T-S, like in statistics, shadowstats.com, run by economist and statistician John Williams. Although it is a subscription site, he does make some of his work available there to the public. And when you go to his website, if you will click on the banner at the top where it says alternate data, he is taking the raw data from the government and recalculating it the way it used to be done by the, which alphabet soup agency, probably OMB, I guess Office of Management and Budget, used to do it before Bush 1 and Clinton and Bush 2, put the screws to him and said, these are not good statistics, this doesn't look good, I want you to go back and recalculate these figures. So they've got all this weird, crazy stuff that they do to the figures, and you can't believe them anymore. It's my understanding, just as an example, that if you've been buying steak at the grocery store and steak goes up, and then all of a sudden you say, well, I can't afford that, I'll just buy a hamburger this week. Well, see, according to them, then your cost of living went down. So that's how screwy and goofy those figures are that you're getting from the government. So anyway, if you look at his figures, particularly like, for instance, the current unemployment rate, he says by the time you add everyone that's unemployed, everyone that's given up looking for work, and fallen off of the unemployment rolls, and working some piddling, part-time job at McDonald's or wherever, just trying to make ends meet, when you look at his chart, he is showing the current unemployment rate at about 22%, just to give you an example. And another another fabulous chart he's got there is the GDP, the gross domestic product. When you look at his chart, by the time you deduct off the inflation, which you have to do, our economy has not been above zero now for about 4 years in a row. The economy has been in negative territories. It's actually been shrinking.
What does that mean exactly? I mean, I know what it. I mean, what would be the result of this shrinkage? With due respect to Seinfeld, I apologize. I apologize if my mind went there. But
I'm sorry, I'm not an economist, but just what he's saying is, hey, if you sold $1,000 last year, and you say this year I'm going to sell $1,100, so hey, the economy is booming, I'm selling more. But when you deduct off the inflation, if you have a 10% inflation, you're back at $1,000 again. So the economy is not growing.
Okay. Well, I heard Sean Hannity briefly today talk about the deficit actually shrunk a little bit, and there was virtual applause over that. But the deficit doesn't tell the whole story. I mean, GDP,
of course, being all of your total goods and services produced in the United States. So we're not producing more. If anything, we're producing less. So,
and
anyway,
I didn't upload this audio to the show tonight. Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to say this. On Real Clear Politics or YouTube, you can look up Rachel Maddow, conspiracy theorist. There is a 4-minute video she put out, and it opened up with how it was a conspiracy theory that Obama and company manipulated the economic and job numbers before the election. It's just a video that is worthless, really, except for looking at the hypocrisy and lies.
Interesting. Okay, guys, I want to say one thing else real quick before I go. I love your show. I'm glad I found you just a couple of weeks ago. I've been listening to your podcast using the iTunes program and putting it on my iPod and listening to it. There's one thing that you guys have got a problem. I know you've had some audio problems, And there's a problem with the podcast. I'll just mention this in passing, and it's a problem that everybody has, and that is the volume varies greatly sometimes from the intro that you do, and then when you play audio clips, those are real loud, and then sometimes the voices are your voices are softer, and some of the callers are softer, and so on. I want to point to a program to you just real quick. It's a free, totally, completely free program out there on the Internet. Anybody else that's doing podcasts might want to look into this. It's called The Levelator. Just level, like you're going to level out the audio and add ATOR on the end of it. And there's even a Wikipedia article about it that explains to you about it and how it works and everything. It is so good, I even recommended it to the people at Koinonia House Ministry, where Dr. Chuck Missler, my favorite Bible teacher, nationally and internationally known Dr. Chuck Missler, because I was having problems listening to his podcast because his voice varies so much sometimes, and suggested it to him, and they tried it, and I talked to them about a week later, and they said, we love it, and they said it is now part of our standard audio processing when we put together our radio program, and, of course, then the radio program goes to podcast. So give that a shot. That might really put the polish onto your podcast. I think you'll find it very interesting.
Ken, I appreciate that. In fact, I just wrote that down. Can that be done in real time? Do you know, or
no? I'm sorry, it does not work live It does not work for live broadcast. I wish it did. It only works for recorded programs, and there are versions for the Windows environment and also for the Macintosh environment too. And it's totally completely free. Give it a shot.
Thank you so much, man.
I think you'll like it. Yeah, I think
appreciate
it'll really help your podcast. Yeah, you guys have a good evening, and God bless. And I'll be listening to you, calling in again soon.
All right, buddy. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
That Joe,
that was a great call.
Yeah, Joe, Ken was a great guy. I remember talking with him Fridays with the Lori Roth. Always a great contributor. And folks, he did mention Shadow Stats. Definitely bookmark that site, because even if you don't get into the subscription part of it, the open source information, you'll have enough to arm yourself when talking with others about the economy and about the real numbers. Shadowstats.com.
Yeah, okay. Let's move on to the calls here. We're going to go to area code 903. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Well, how y'all doing this evening? I called back there on New Year's about a prediction I made on oil. I don't know if y'all remember me or not, but you had asked about what I'd done with my 401k or my retirement. You know, recently I took $288,000 out of my retirement. I paid the penalty, and I went down and bought tangible metals. I bought some nickel bullion, some gold bullion, some silver bullion, and I wanted to kind of give everybody a little update on that deal, because if you spend more than $9,999, you have to fill out DHS paperwork. So what I've been doing since I took it out is I go down to my local coin dealer, my local bullion dealer. No questions asked. They don't ask my name. Of course, she knows me. But you can spend that $9,999 in cash. They'll hand you the silver over, and you can do that twice a day. So just thought I'd give everybody a little bit of a heads up on that.
Well, let me ask you a question on that. If
sure.
Well, what kind of paperwork do you have to fill out if it's over $10,000? Obviously, I've never had that problem.
I kind of asked the old gal that, and you have to fill out some kind of anti-terrorism DHS paperwork, and I never got into it, but she has to report it to the Internal Revenue Service. She has to report it to the Department of Homeland Security. They got to make a phone call. It's kind of like buying a firearm. You can be delayed, the whole 9 yards. I haven't spent that yet, because I'll spend that $9,999, pay cash for it. There's no paperwork done. I bring it home, I stash it, I hide it, and so I haven't done it, and I'm not going to. And the rest of it I keep in cash, But the thing is, I mean, when you take that money out of a 401k, and again, I'm not bragging, it's just a lot of money because I've been working. I'm 45 years old, and I'm a high-income earner in the oil field. And my companies, throughout the years have been matching my money dollar for dollar. So I had quite a bit of money in there, and that was $288,000 after I paid about 33% taxes up front. So they know you took the money out. It's just that they can't track it, if you're dealing in cash. So I've kind of dealt in cash, bought some 10-ounce silver pieces, some other stuff, some platinum, some palladium, the whole 9 yards, and I've just kind of been hiding it. So I don't know. I can probably ask and find out for y'all, though.
Well, I mean, I'm just curious. You can also send us your address in a metal detector. We'll come down to your place. And no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. Sure. No problem. And here in Texas, we have a theory about that. Make sure you come after 9 o'clock at night. I leave my door unlocked. Just open the door and come on in.
Hey, I'm pushing Joe in first, okay? He's going to go first with the door. But any regrets about taking the money out?
No, and I've still got a couple other retirement accounts. I'm going to go ahead and let it sit, kind of sit there in paper because I'm currently employed, and they're still matching buck for buck. So even with a 50% decline, in the stock market, I'm still, coming out even. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying? I used to be a stockbroker, so I kind of understand this stuff. If they're matching me dollar for dollar, and I'm putting in, let's say, $1,000 a month, and then my company's matching buck for buck, I'm getting $2,000 for a month, although I don't think I can go over that because I'm not sure what the current 401k match limitation is, but I haven't checked up on it in a while. But so with the money that I'm still putting in there, if they're matching me buck for buck, I'm still looking at, if I can if there's a 50% decline in the market or a 100% devaluation of the dollar, I'm still coming out even. So I'm still continuing to put money in there, and I've still got money in a couple of the accounts. But no, as of right now, no, I haven't had any regrets at all. My biggest concern is that somebody finds my stash.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be my concern as well. But it sounds like you're smarter than the average bear, and I'm sure you've got that covered. So that's a good thing. But
well, and I'll make a couple of suggestions for you. And this is going to sound crazy, but if you bury the stuff in the ground and you put up, you go down to your local brake, the guys that do the brakes on your cars, and you get a 5-gallon bucket of metal filings, and you scatter them on the backyard, they can't detect it with a metal detector. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
So, no, I haven't had any regrets. I think that this is probably, for me, I'm just trying to protect my wealth a little bit. I've got a family, got people to take care of. I really don't care about the money. I didn't even realize I had that much in there. But, for 25 years, I've been putting money into the account, and, it's been matched and all that. But I don't want to lose everything. And now today, they're talking about, there's been a lot of rumblings that they're going to take our dadgum money from us. It ain't their money, it's my money. They're going to take our 401ks. There's been some mainstream, media stuff that they want to, actually start seizing our dadgum 401ks. And, I'm actually more uncomfortable keeping this amount of cash in the house because I can only go down and do, $9,999 a day until I get it all converted over to metals of some sort. But fortunately here locally, there's 2 different shops I can go to. As long as I don't spend over that, as long as I'm a buck less than the $10,000, I'm all right.
Wow.
So, there's some states like Illinois or however y'all pronounce it up there in Yankee land, that they're actually talking about tracking gold and silver purchases. And I just don't want to get to that point. It ain't none of nobody's business. And I'll be honest with you, I've actually used my silver for bartering before. So I'm just trying to protect what's mine. Once the system collapses, and I believe it's probably going to collapse, hopefully I can come through on the other side with protecting my wealth. And, it's not that I'm greedy, but it's mine. I work for it. I work hard. I'm in a dangerous business. I in the drilling business. I can die at any time. I just want to make sure nobody is left with nothing. So does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Refresh our memories, if you will. Save me from digging for my show notes from December. What was your prediction on oil?
I gave you two predictions. I said that by the end of 2013, we're going to hit 125 plus. That's number one per barrel, and that there will be a public announcement that we are now exporting more oil than we're importing in this country. And there's actually been a couple of announcements. They're not really official yet, but I still think that real soon we're going to hear that we're energy independent in this country and that we're exporting oil to other countries more than we're importing, from the Middle East and Canada and Mexico and all that. So I've been in the business for a long time. I understand the business real well. So, and I'm, I keep in touch with things. You're actually, right now, of course, you're going to get me talking about oil, and then you'll have to hang up on me. But, you're going to see a real steep increase in gasoline prices, even though oil itself, the barrel of oil, is not really going up. It's kind of holding steady between 96 and $97 a barrel. But you're starting to see an increase in the end consumer's price of that gallon of gasoline, and you're going to see that continue to increase, especially in places with high tax rates.
Would the valuation of the dollar be a part of that?
That's a part of it, and the tax revenue is another part of it. And right now, probably one of the biggest challenges to us end consumers, I say us even though I don't buy my own gasoline, the company provides it, is the production or the refining of the oil. We're having a problem with refining right now, and as you see the change, especially in the spring, you're going to see another increase in gasoline prices because of the switch over from the winter blend to the summer blend.
Wow. You seem to be very familiar with oil, or at least the oil market. This new E15 gasoline, the manufacturers of cars say they won't warranty let any car, receive a warranty with cars who use this gasoline, but it looks like the government and EPA are going to move forward in watering down the gas more.
Well, let me tell you about that junk that they're forcing through, on the E15, and actually I think they're talking about E20 now. As a matter of fact, this stuff for the oil industry, for a guy like me that works in the oil industry and, I don't buy my own gasoline, so I don't worry so much about it. It's actually a good thing because this ethanol that they're producing is a energy loss product. It takes more energy to produce the end gallon of ethanol than you get out of the ethanol itself. But the problem with ethanol, it's actually alcohol. It's similar to a bottle of booze or a bottle of rubbing alcohol, and it actually destroys any of the rubber parts that it touches. Well, as you and I both know, cars today are made out of plastics and rubber and everything else. And it actually dissolves a lot of the rubber gaskets in the fuel lines, in the fuel filters, and the gaskets and the whole 9 yards. I understand why these companies will not warranty it. It's junk. It's garbage. It doesn't run. It ruins old lawnmowers. If you have a classic car, drive out to the edge of town, find some of the old school gasoline. Don't run it. I've got an old vehicle, and we don't sell much ethanol out here in West Texas. I run regular gasoline on it. So, I understand why they're not. Now, if the government mandates that the car companies support it, there's going to be a problem. I think there's going to be a bunch of legal battles and, all that stuff. So.
Wow. Yeah, when we see the car industries coming out and saying, no, this is not good. This will ruin the engine. So we won't uphold any warranties for people who use this. That's a big problem.
Well,
Wow.
I equate this ethanol garbage that they're forcing on us right now to the old MTBE, which was a gasoline additive they forced on the consumer, and they started dumping this MTBE. Don't ask me what it stands for. I'm not a chemist. But they dumped it in there, and then all of a sudden, Lake Tahoe up there in California, Nevada, was all, polluted with this MTBE that causes cancer, everything else, and they quit, adding the MTBE to the gasoline as an additive that was supposed to prevent global warming, and next thing you know, now they're mandating this crap, this alcohol, this methanol junk, and, again, I'm going to get a little political on you here, but I blame guys like Bob Dole and some of them knuckleheads from the central, part of the United States in corn country that mandated this damn corn ethanol on the consumer and put it into law. It really doesn't do any good. We're better off just using good old-fashioned gasoline that has a higher energy value. And, what's really screwed up about this, when you go down and buy gasoline and you're buying the premium products, the 92 or 93 octane stuff, well, what you're really getting is a higher level of ethanol. They're putting more ethanol in it because ethanol will actually, you're correct, it does produce more octane, but in the long run, you get a lowering of your gas mileage. So what happens is, let's say they're putting 15% ethanol in your gasoline, you're getting a 20% decrease in your mileage, so you're actually burning 5% more gasoline and producing more carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, which I don't buy, more pollution in the long run. It's a screwed up system, but it's political based on a lot of these dead-gum senators and congressmen from these areas that, are corn-producing areas. So, and don't get me wrong, I actually have some stocks in some of these ethanol companies, but it's a scam. It's all it is. It's a scam.
Man.
Yeah. No,
everything's a scam. Everything is. It seems like this whole thing, this EPA thing. We have not heard, by the way, from Lisa Perez Jackson, the EPA administrator. I believe that she might be hiding in some undisclosed location for all the misery she has inflicted upon the country by the EPA, but it's only going to get worse, I have a feeling. So we're going to be driving with high fructose corn syrup in our cars, basically, pretty soon.
Yeah. And what's really screwed up? This is the most messed up part of this whole ethanol deal. All right, is they're actually taking food, which is corn, and you can bring the whole GMO thing into it if you want to, but they're actually taking food and they're converting it to something to make our cars that go down the road. And in the meantime, we have people in other countries, specifically Morocco and North Africa, that are starving to death because they don't have enough money on a daily basis to buy the amount of food needed to survive. And we're taking that food, and as Americans, we're pretty affluent, so we can afford to do this and, convert it to gasoline. But in some countries where they're paying 20 and 30 and 40% of their daily income just to buy food to feed their families, they're the ones being screwed on the global market. And if you look at the price of corn, corn, I believe, and I haven't looked at it, but I believe it's around $8 a bushel. I was raised on a farm. When I was a kid, if we could get $1 a bushel for corn and $2 a bushel for wheat, we were doing real well. Well, you look at corn right now, we're looking at $8 a bushel. Wheat is pushing $9 a bushel for wheat, on the open market, and we wonder why when we go down and buy a loaf of bread, it's costing us $5, and we're going down and buying corn tortillas, and corn tortillas are now $5 a dozen. That's the reason, because they're taking the corn off the market and using it to convert into ethanol, which destroys our vehicles, lowers our fuel mileage, so we're having to put more money in to buy fuel to drive to the grocery store and pay $5 for a loaf of bread. It's really a screwed up system. And again, I blame a lot of this. And again, I'm a libertarian, so I hate both parties equally. But I blame a lot of this on a lot of these Republican senators and congressmen that come from Iowa, that come from Kansas, that come from Nebraska. You know, Bob Dole in particular was one of the guys that was real instrumental in pushing this ethanol crap back in the 90s, and it's a scam, and it takes more energy to create a gallon of ethanol than you can get out of that gallon of ethanol when you burn it in your vehicle. So actually, as a guy that works in the oil industry, it's not a bad deal because we got to produce more petroleum out here in West Texas so that the farmer out in Kansas can produce the corn so that you can mix it with your gasoline to get lower gas mileage. So it's all screwed up. It's really a mess.
Man. Wow, you said a mouthful, though. Thank you so much for that information, my friend. Wow.
Yeah.
Joe?
Well, I appreciate y'all letting me call in.
God bless you.
Adios.
Take care.
So much to think about. It's almost, I don't know, it's almost paralyzing when you start to take things apart like this.
It is paralyzing. It is worrisome. It is frustrating. It can be fearful, but it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to have this grim outlook always, or this grim feeling. I mean, I know the overwhelming majority of people feel the spiritual intensity and heaviness, but we're supposed to be joyous and happy, knowing our future, no matter what happens on this earth, knowing what is to come.
Right.
No matter what tribulations or problems we go through as a nation or individually or as a neighborhood, a town, we should always be grateful. We should always be happy we're still alive. We should always be grateful for every and anything we have, whether it be a roof over our head or running water or food or anything, family. And we need to grow closer to that instead of the way we see society moving towards narcissism, lovers of self, putting everything else before what's important, even the truth, even their own country's downfall, putting entertainment above that, putting, anything above something that will damage another person. If you know that, or were told, and about something that you knew, like say I was told that you were going to get into a car accident at such and such an interchange at 3 o'clock tomorrow, and I didn't warn you, that would be on me. But the people who hear these things, the people who see these things, that were warned, and if you still find yourself at that intersection at that time, that's your fault.
Right, and that's a good point. We as watchmen have a very important responsibility, and we don't. You know what, folks? We don't take that lightly.
And we must, always give glory to the Lord, because this is His work, as far as spreading His word through the show. It wasn't our idea. It wasn't our set goal or intention when we started this, and it's done, and it's helped a lot of people. Whether it's something we said or anybody else said, it has, and we have to give the glory to Him, put Him first in our lives, and the listeners have to put Him first in their lives, and it'll continue to get better for those individuals who do that, no matter what happens around you. The world could be falling down around you, but be grateful.
Though,
what you have.
Yeah, and one of the things I take joy in is the callers, or the emails I get saying, this caller or that caller said some things that helped me, or I can relate to this person. And it seems like, we are, in some small way, a conduit, a nexus point for for others, and for that we thank God to have that ability. And we're still working, by the way, on different initiatives to help our listeners even further. But folks, I want to thank you for listening. If you have a chance, listen to Pete Santilli tomorrow. I'll be on, and join us tomorrow night. Joe and I will be in studio together for another broadcast.
Yes, and I was not in the studio tonight. And just to let everybody know, I don't know if I'm getting a cold or flu. I'm not sure. And if I do, it's your fault, Dad. I'm blaming you. But I feel okay. I feel better than I did when we started the show, so that's a good sign. I'm not coughing or sneezing, and I'm happy. But God bless each and every one of you. We'll see you here tomorrow night, same time, 8 to 11. And be safe and pray for the people impacted by the earthquake.
Indeed. Right. Good night.
I'm